Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, I was moving out of my apartment when I decided to clean behind the washer for the first time. That's when I noticed a faint draft. Behind the paneling there was a small rectangular opening, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Curiosity pushed me further. I crawled in and found a narrow tunnel. At the end there was a camera, and behind it an entire wall covered in screens showing different apartments, mine included. I saw myself in real time, moving. Someone had been watching, recording. The feed was still live. I ripped out the wires and crawled out in a panic. But when I returned the next day with a friend, the space was gone. Panel sealed. Camera vanished. The silence in my apartment felt different after that. Every creak, every shadow seemed to carry weight. I kept running my fingers along the wall where the opening had been, feeling for gaps, inconsistencies. The paneling looked pristine, factory sealed. My friend kept asking questions I couldn't answer. How could something that substantial just disappear overnight? How could I prove what I'd seen? I started paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. The way my upstairs neighbor always seemed to know when I was home. The maintenance man who lingered too long when fixing the sink, his eyes scanning corners of rooms. The landlord's son who had keys to everything and moved through the building like he owned every secret it held. The rental office had files on all of us. I convinced them I needed to check something about my lease. While the clerk was distracted, I glanced at other tenants' records, notes in margins that seemed oddly detailed, comments about routines, visitors, personal habits. Information that felt too intimate for a property management company to possess. That's when I found the work orders, dozens of them, all signed by the same contractor. Electrical upgrades, ventilation improvements, plumbing repairs, but the dates were strange. Work supposedly done in units while tenants were present, yet none of us remembered any repairs. The contractor's signature was illegible, but the phone number led to a disconnected line. I began watching the building differently. Residents came and went with predictable patterns. Some moved out suddenly, always during the same month. Always single women, always young professionals. The turnover rate was unusually high for such a desirable location. The rent was below market value, which should have been my first warning. I started documenting everything, taking photos of the wall, the building's exterior, the maintenance schedules posted in the lobby. I interviewed neighbors casually, asking about repairs, strange noises, anything unusual. Most people were eager to talk. They'd noticed things too, sounds in the walls, electrical issues that seemed to fix themselves, the feeling of being watched. One tenant mentioned her laptop camera light coming on randomly. Another talked about finding her apartment door unlocked when she was certain she'd locked it. Small things, easy to dismiss individually, but together they painted a disturbing picture. The building's history was public record. Previous complaints to housing authorities about privacy violations, noise ordinances, suspicious activity, all dismissed due to lack of evidence, all filed by former tenants who'd moved out suddenly. The pattern was consistent, spanning several years. I tried to track down some of these former residents. Social media made it easy to find a few. When I reached out, their responses were cautious, afraid. One agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. She looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. She told me about finding strange equipment in her bathroom vent, about maintenance workers who seemed to know too much about her daily schedule, about the feeling that someone was always listening. She'd reported it to police, but without concrete evidence, they couldn't act. She moved out within the month. The equipment she described matched what I'd seen in that crawl space. High-end surveillance gear, the kind used by professionals, not something a casual voyeur would have access to. This was organized, systematic, ongoing. I went back to the rental office with more questions. This time I was direct. I asked about the contractor, about the work orders, about the pattern of tenant complaints. The clerk became uncomfortable, said she'd have to check with management. When I returned the next day, she'd been replaced by someone new who claimed to know nothing about previous conversations. The building's ownership was buried in layers of corporate entities. Shell companies registered to P.O. boxes, each one leading to another dead end. Whoever was behind this had resources, sophistication, and something to hide. I realized I was asking the wrong questions. Instead of focusing on who was watching, I should have been asking why. What was valuable enough to justify this level of surveillance? What were they looking for? The answer came when I found the storage unit. Every tenant had one in the basement, included with rent. Mine was supposed to be empty since I'd never used it, but when I opened it, there were boxes inside, files with my name on them, photos of me I'd never posed for, copies of documents I'd never provided. They weren't just watching, they were building profiles, collecting data, storing information. The question wasn't whether I was being surveilled. The question was what they planned to do with everything they'd gathered. I left the building that night and never returned. My security deposit was forfeited, my belongings abandoned. Sometimes I wonder if the new tenant found the crawl space, if they were curious enough to crawl through, if they're still there watching screens, wondering who's watching them. The apartment was re-rented within a week. Another young professional, another predictable routine. The cycle continues, and somewhere, someone is still collecting, still recording, still building their files. I moved across the country, changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between sleep and waking, I can still feel those cameras watching. Still hear the soft hum of recording equipment hidden behind walls I'll never see. Crime 2, I had no idea someone opened a storage unit in my name. The bill came by accident, addressed correctly, but for a service I'd never used. I drove out to the facility and convinced the clerk to let me peek inside. What I saw made me freeze: photos of strangers, cut up newspaper clippings, bags of clothes, and a lockbox filled with unregistered cell phones. One drawer had forged IDs, all with my face. Someone was living as me, creating something dark under my name. I reported it. The unit was cleaned out before police arrived. I've been locked out of my accounts ever since. The clerk's hands shook as she handed me the invoice. Her eyes darted between the paper and my face, like she was comparing features she'd memorized. The smell of industrial cleaner couldn't mask something else lingering in the air, something metallic and stale that made my stomach turn. I walked those concrete corridors, counting unit numbers, feeling the weight of fluorescent lights humming overhead. When we reached Unit 47, she fumbled with the keys. The metal door rolled up with a grinding sound that echoed through the empty hallway. The first thing I noticed was how organized everything looked. Boxes stacked with military precision, labeled in handwriting that wasn't mine but somehow felt familiar. The second thing was the mannequin in the corner, dressed in clothes I recognized from my own closet, clothes I thought I'd lost or donated. I stepped inside without permission. The concrete floor was cold through my shoes, and each footstep seemed to announce my intrusion. The clerk stayed by the entrance, her breathing shallow and quick. One box contained photographs, hundreds of them. Strangers caught in everyday moments, walking to cars, entering buildings, sitting at cafe tables. Each photo had notes written on the back in that same almost familiar handwriting. Observations about routines, habits, weaknesses. A woman with short hair had been marked as trusting, walks alone after dark. A man in a business suit was labeled, leaves car unlocked, takes same route daily. The newspaper clippings were more disturbing. Missing person reports, unsolved disappearances, cold cases spanning years. Some faces in the clippings matched the photographs. Red string connected pictures to articles, creating a web of connections I couldn't understand but felt in my bones. I found the burner phones in a metal lockbox that opened with a key hidden inside a hollowed-out book. Each phone had numbers saved under single letters, A, B, C, D. I scrolled through text messages that made my skin crawl. Conversations about schedules, locations, opportunities. The last text on phone C was sent 2 days ago. Target confirmed, proceeding as discussed. But it was the drawer of forged identification documents that made me understand the scope of what I'd stumbled into. Driver's licenses, credit cards, social security cards, passports, all bearing my photograph, my face, but different names, different addresses, different lives. The quality was perfect, professional. Whoever created these had resources, connections, expertise. I photographed everything with trembling fingers before the clerk could stop me. The flash illuminated details I'd missed in the dim light. Scratch marks on the concrete walls, dark stains that had been scrubbed but not eliminated, a calendar with dates circled in red ink that corresponded to the newspaper clippings. The detective who took my report had tired eyes and spoke in monotone. He wrote down everything I said but kept glancing at his watch. When I showed him the photographs I'd taken, he leaned back in his chair and sighed like this was just another headache he didn't need. 3 days later, he called to tell me the unit was empty, cleaned out completely, he said. Security cameras had malfunctioned that week, no footage available. The rental agreement had been paid in cash, signed with my forged signature. The address listed was fake. That's when the real nightmare began. My credit card stopped working. Bank accounts frozen pending investigation. Email accounts locked due to suspicious activity. Social media profiles suspended. Every digital trace of my existence became inaccessible overnight, like someone had systematically dismantled my identity from the inside. I couldn't prove I was myself anymore. The woman at the bank looked at me with suspicion when I tried to explain. My own driver's license seemed insufficient. They wanted documents I couldn't access, verification from accounts I couldn't reach. Each attempt to restore my identity only deepened their doubt about who I really was. The detective stopped returning my calls. The storage facility claimed no record of my visit. The clerk who'd shown me the unit had quit without notice, left no forwarding address. I started noticing things that made my paranoia feel justified. Cars that appeared on my street too often. Faces that seemed familiar from the surveillance photos. My mail arrived opened and resealed. Someone had been in my apartment, nothing missing, but things slightly out of place in ways only I would notice. I found myself checking locks multiple times, covering my laptop camera, paying cash for everything. Trust became impossible. Every interaction felt like a performance, like someone was watching, evaluating, planning. The worst part is the uncertainty that gnaws at me every sleepless night. Who was behind the storage unit? How long had they been using my identity? What had they done while pretending to be me? Were those missing persons connected to my stolen face, my forged documents? And the question that haunts me most, what if this isn't random? What if someone chose me specifically, studied me, learned my patterns, my weaknesses? What if they're still out there, still wearing my face, still living as me in ways I'll never know? I catch myself in mirrors now, wondering if the person looking back is really me or just another carefully constructed facade. The line between victim and perpetrator has blurred beyond recognition. In trying to reclaim my identity, I've lost touch with who I actually am. The storage unit is gone, the evidence vanished, the investigation stalled. But somewhere out there, someone is still using my face, my name, my life to do things I can't imagine and will never know about. And there's nothing I can do except wait for the next bill, the next call, the next sign that my stolen identity is being used for purposes that would destroy whatever's left of who I used to be. Crime 3, they started appearing under my door, crude sketches of my place from impossible angles, overhead views, cross-sections, even renderings of the items on my shelves. The last one showed me asleep in bed, viewed from above. I don't have a skylight. I installed cameras. Nothing. Then I noticed the ceiling vent had been shifted slightly. Inside, I found a rope ladder leading to a space between my floor and the roof. It was empty except for a blanket, some food wrappers, and a stack of drawings I hadn't received yet. The final one showed me discovering the vent. The paper felt wrong in my hands, too smooth, too expensive for someone leaving anonymous sketches. I held it up to the light, searching for watermarks or any identifying marks. Nothing, but the smell lingered, a faint chemical scent, like photo developer fluid mixed with something metallic I couldn't place. I spread the drawings across my kitchen table, trying to make sense of the precision. These weren't random sketches. Every detail was accurate down to the chipped corner of my coffee table, the way my books leaned against each other on the shelf, even the pattern of dust under my couch. Someone had been watching, documenting, studying my life with scientific thoroughness. The overhead view bothered me most. It showed my apartment from directly above, as if someone had removed the roof and peered down into my private space. Every room was mapped out with architectural precision. My bed positioned in the corner, my desk with papers scattered across its surface, even the way I left my shoes kicked off beside the front door. But how could anyone achieve this perspective? I called the building manager. He assured me no maintenance work had been scheduled, no one had accessed the roof. The building was secure, he insisted, his voice carrying that practiced dismissiveness of someone who'd fielded too many tenant complaints. But I heard something else underneath, a hesitation when I described the drawings, a pause that lasted just long enough to make me wonder what he wasn't saying. The police officer who responded seemed more interested in my coffee than my story. She flipped through the sketches with the detached efficiency of someone processing routine paperwork. Probably kids, she suggested, though she couldn't explain how kids would access restricted areas or produce such detailed architectural renderings. She took photos of the drawings, promised to file a report, and left me with a case number I knew would disappear into some digital filing system. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the building felt amplified, footsteps in the hallway, pipes settling, the hum of electricity behind the walls. I found myself staring at the ceiling, imagining someone moving through hidden spaces above me, documenting my every movement. I started my own investigation. The building's blueprints, archived in the municipal records office, revealed a different story than what the manager had told me. There were maintenance passages, utility spaces, areas between floors that weren't supposed to exist according to the official layout. Someone had modified the building's structure, creating a network of hidden spaces that connected the apartments like capillaries in a circulatory system. The librarian who helped me access the records seemed nervous. She kept glancing over her shoulder, speaking in whispers even though we were alone in the archive room. She mentioned other tenants had requested similar information recently, people from my building asking questions about structural modifications and maintenance access. When I pressed for details, she claimed she couldn't remember specifics, but her hands shook as she gathered the documents. I began watching my neighbors differently. The man who lived below me, who always seemed to be home but never made noise. The woman across the hall who collected my packages when I wasn't home, who somehow always knew when deliveries arrived. The maintenance worker I'd seen in the building, but who didn't appear on any official staff roster, according to the manager. The drawings kept coming, each one more personal, more invasive. My medicine cabinet contents sketched with pharmaceutical precision. The books on my nightstand drawn with their titles clearly visible. Even my laundry hamper showing clothes I remembered wearing days before the sketch appeared. I installed motion sensors, changed my locks, covered every possible entry point. Nothing stopped them. Whoever was doing this had access that transcended normal security measures. They moved through my space like a ghost, leaving evidence of their presence while remaining completely invisible to any detection method I could devise. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. My downstairs neighbor mentioned strange sounds during the night, not from my apartment, but from somewhere in between our units. Scratching, like someone moving through tight spaces. He'd assumed it was rats, but the sounds were too rhythmic, too purposeful for rodents. Together, we examined the area where our apartments connected. Behind a panel that looked like decorative trim, we found access to a crawl space that extended throughout the building. The space was equipped with permanent lighting, ventilation, even what appeared to be a communication system connecting different sections. Someone had turned the building into their personal observatory. From these hidden passages, they could access any apartment, monitor any resident, document any activity. The drawings weren't random harassment, they were documentation, evidence of systematic surveillance that had been ongoing for months, possibly years. But who was orchestrating this, and why? The more I learned, the more questions multiplied. Tenants who'd moved out suddenly without explanation. Maintenance requests that were handled by workers no one could identify. Rent payments that sometimes went missing from the management office before being mysteriously found and deposited. The building manager finally agreed to meet with me privately. In his cramped office, surrounded by filing cabinets and outdated computer equipment, he revealed what he'd been hiding. The building's ownership was complicated, he explained. Multiple shell companies, overseas investors, legal structures that made it impossible to determine who actually controlled the property. He'd received instructions to accommodate certain special maintenance requirements, to ask no questions about after-hours access or unusual construction activities. The instructions came with payments large enough to make compliance worthwhile and threats subtle enough to make non-compliance inadvisable. But even he didn't know who was behind the surveillance operation. The communications were always intermediated through lawyers or property management companies that existed only on paper. He was just another person caught in a system designed to obscure responsibility and enable anonymity. I realized I wasn't the only target. The drawings of my apartment were part of something larger, a comprehensive monitoring operation that encompassed the entire building. Every tenant was being watched, documented, studied like specimens in some bizarre social experiment. The final drawing I received changed everything. It showed my kitchen table with all the previous sketches spread across its surface, drawn from an angle that would require someone to be standing directly behind me as I examined them. In the corner of the drawing, barely visible, was a reflection in my kitchen window, a face I recognized. It was my own face, but distorted, like seeing myself through a funhouse mirror. The features were mine, but arranged wrong, as if someone had studied my appearance and tried to recreate it from memory. Below the reflection, in handwriting I now realized looked suspiciously familiar, were the words, "You see what you need to see." I stopped sleeping in my apartment. I stopped trusting my memories. Every interaction, every conversation, every moment of privacy had been compromised for longer than I could determine. The drawings weren't threats, they were evidence that my life had become someone else's project, my privacy someone else's entertainment. The police case went nowhere. Evidence disappeared from their files. The officers who took my statements were transferred to different departments. Even the building manager stopped returning my calls, and when I went to his office, I found it empty, with no forwarding information available. I moved out, but the drawings followed me to my new address. Different paper, different style, but the same impossible perspectives, the same intimate knowledge of my private spaces. Whoever was doing this had resources and patience that transcended normal stalking behaviors. I've stopped trying to solve it. The truth feels too large, too systematic to confront alone. Sometimes I wonder if I'm documenting my own surveillance, if the drawings are meant to make me aware of observation rather than hide it. Perhaps being watched was never the crime. Perhaps discovering the watching was always the intended outcome. The final drawing sits on my desk as I write this. It shows me at my computer, typing these exact words, viewed from an angle that suggests someone standing directly behind my chair. At the bottom, in that familiar handwriting that might be my own, it says, "Every story needs a narrator." Crime 4, I took a sip and something hit my tongue. At first I thought it was a piece of plastic, but the shape was wrong, sharp, dense. I poured out the rest of the bottle and saw it fall into the sink. A molar, clean but real. I contacted the bottling company. They denied everything and stopped replying to my emails. A few days later I received a small package at my door, no return address. Inside were more teeth wrapped in foil, each one labeled with what looked like initials. Mine was one of them. The package smelled like antiseptic. Each tooth was wrapped individually, the foil crisp and clean, as if someone had taken care to preserve them properly. I counted 17 teeth total. The initials were written in black ink on small white labels stuck to each piece of foil. The handwriting was careful, almost medical in its precision. I kept the teeth in a shoebox under my bed. Every night I could hear them shifting slightly when I moved, a soft rattling that made my skin crawl. During the day I found myself checking the box, counting them again, studying the initials. Some letters appeared more than once. The handwriting never changed. The water bottle had come from a vending machine at the community center where I volunteer. I started avoiding that machine, but the questions wouldn't leave me alone. Who puts human teeth in water bottles? Why were they labeled? And why had someone sent me more, including one marked with my own initials? I began asking around the community center. The maintenance worker, a thin man with nervous eyes, told me the vending machine had been there for years. Different companies had serviced it, but he couldn't remember which ones. He kept looking over his shoulder while we talked, as if someone might be listening. The woman who ran the front desk said she'd heard complaints about the water before. People mentioned strange tastes, but nobody had ever mentioned finding anything solid. She pulled out a logbook and showed me entries dating back months, complaints about metallic flavors, unusual smells, water that looked cloudy even when the bottle was new. I started buying water from that machine every day, checking each bottle carefully before drinking. The bottles all looked normal, sealed properly, with no signs of tampering. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Other people used the machine without incident. They drank their water quickly, without examining it first. One evening I stayed late at the community center, pretending to work on paperwork while watching the vending machine. A man in a janitor's uniform came by and unlocked it. He wasn't the maintenance worker I'd spoken to before. This man was older, with steady hands and a calm demeanor. He removed several bottles from the machine, checked them against a list, and then restocked them with bottles from a cooler he'd brought. I followed him to the parking lot, keeping my distance. He loaded his cooler into a white van with no company markings. The license plate was partially obscured by mud, but I managed to write down what I could see. The van drove away slowly, as if the driver was in no hurry. The next day I checked the machine again. The bottles looked identical to the ones I'd been buying for weeks. I purchased one and took it home to examine under a bright light. The seal appeared intact, but when I looked closely at the bottom of the bottle, I could see a tiny puncture mark, so small I might have missed it if I hadn't been looking for it. I decided to confront the maintenance worker again. This time I found him in the basement storage room, sorting supplies. When I mentioned the man in the janitor's uniform, his face went pale. He said there was no janitor who worked evenings. The building was supposed to be locked after regular hours. That night I broke into the community center. The locks were old, and I'd learned a few things about getting through doors during my years working various jobs. I went straight to the vending machine and managed to open it using a key I'd taken from the maintenance worker's desk. Inside, I found exactly what I expected and exactly what I'd hoped not to find. Several bottles had been tampered with. The caps had been removed and carefully resealed. Inside some of the bottles, I could see small objects floating in the water, not just teeth, other things, pieces of fingernail, strands of hair, small fragments that looked like they might be bone. I took photographs of everything, then closed the machine and left. The next morning, I called the police. They listened to my story with the kind of patience that suggested they'd heard stranger things. An officer came to examine the vending machine, but by then it had been emptied and restocked with normal bottles. The officer took my statement and the photographs, but he seemed skeptical. He asked if I'd been under any stress lately, if I'd been sleeping well. He suggested that sometimes people see things that aren't really there, especially when they're looking for something specific. I gave him the box of teeth. He promised to have them analyzed to check for DNA to see if they matched any missing persons reports. Weeks passed without any word. When I called the station, they told me the evidence had been lost in a filing error. They had no record of my photographs or my statement. I started researching the bottling company that had originally denied my complaint. According to public records, the company had been sold twice in the past year. The current owners operated out of a small office that, when I visited, appeared to be empty. The building manager said the company had moved out months ago without leaving a forwarding address. I found myself thinking about the initials on the teeth. My own initials had been there, but I'd never given a tooth to anyone. I'd never had dental work done at a place where my teeth might have been kept. The only explanation was that someone had been planning to include me in whatever collection they were building. The community center installed a new vending machine. The old one disappeared overnight. I asked the maintenance worker about it, but he'd been replaced by someone new, someone who claimed to know nothing about the previous machine or the man in the janitor's uniform. I still volunteer at the community center, but I bring my own water now. Sometimes I catch other volunteers looking at me strangely, as if they know something I don't. Or maybe they're wondering why I keep staring at the new vending machine, why I won't use it no matter how thirsty I get. The truth is, I'm not sure what I found that night. The evidence is gone, the people involved have vanished, and everyone I've told the story to looks at me with that same patient skepticism. But I know what I tasted in that water bottle. I know what I saw in those photographs. And I know that somewhere, someone has a collection of teeth with initials on them, including mine. I've started checking my mail more carefully. Every package makes me nervous. Every bottle of water I buy gets examined under bright light before I drink it. I've learned to live with the knowledge that some questions don't have answers, that some mysteries are designed to remain unsolved. The man in the janitor's uniform might still be out there, restocking vending machines in other buildings, other communities. He might have moved on to a different method of collection, a different way of gathering what he needs. Or maybe he's watching me right now, waiting to see if I'll keep asking questions, keep looking for answers that no one wants to give. I've stopped trying to solve the mystery, but I haven't stopped thinking about it. And every time I pass a vending machine, I wonder what might be floating in those bottles, what secrets might be sealed inside, waiting for someone else to take that first, unsuspecting sip. Crime 5, management insists the unit upstairs has been empty for months. I would have believed them if I didn't hear footsteps pacing every night. Heavy, deliberate, moving from one end of the ceiling to the other. I recorded the sounds and brought them to the office. They shrugged. Pipes. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I found the master key left on a cleaning cart and snuck in. The place was dark but clean. On the floor were dozens of footprints in dust, bare, wide, and going in circles. I turned to leave and saw fresh prints behind me, but mine weren't the only set. The silence that followed felt heavier than the footsteps ever had. I stood there, my phone's flashlight trembling in my grip, illuminating those impossible prints. Mine were there, clear boot treads leading from the door. But beside them, overlapping in some places, were the bare impressions I'd seen scattered throughout the apartment. Someone had followed me in. I forced myself to breathe slowly, listening for any sound beyond my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. The apartment smelled wrong, not musty like an abandoned space should, but clean with an underlying chemical tang that made my throat burn. Bleach maybe, or something stronger. My investigation started the next morning with the building manager, a thin woman who avoided eye contact when I pressed her about the vacant unit. She insisted on checking the records again, fingers dancing nervously across her keyboard. Empty since March, she repeated, but her voice wavered. Previous tenant moved out suddenly, paid through the end of their lease, though. I asked to see the move-out inspection report. She claimed it was filed somewhere in storage, would take weeks to locate. When I offered to help search, she declined quickly, too quickly. The other tenants were more revealing in their reluctance to talk. Mrs. Chen from the second floor mentioned seeing moving trucks, all different times, always late. The college student across the hall from the empty unit had started wearing noise-canceling headphones to sleep. Just easier, he mumbled, refusing to elaborate. I began keeping a log of the sounds, not just the footsteps, but everything. The occasional scraping, like furniture being dragged, the soft thud of something heavy being set down, muffled voices that could have been television or conversation. The sounds had patterns, active periods followed by complete silence, as if someone was maintaining a schedule. The breakthrough came when I checked the utility records, public information, easily accessible online. The electric and water usage for the supposedly vacant apartment showed consistent consumption, not the minimal baseline of an empty unit, but the fluctuating patterns of regular occupancy. Someone was living there. I confronted the manager again, armed with printed utility statements. Her demeanor shifted entirely, no more nervous deflection, but a cold, calculated stare. "You need to drop this," she said simply. "Some situations are complicated." That phrase haunted me. Complicated how? I started researching the building's ownership, digging through property records and business filings. The trail led through several shell companies before I found a name that made my stomach drop. The building was owned by a trust linked to a law enforcement pension fund. The pieces clicked into a horrifying picture: witness protection. The empty apartment wasn't empty, it was housing someone who needed to disappear, someone whose testimony had put dangerous people behind bars. The careful scheduling, the official denials, the manager's sudden shift from nervous to threatening. But that created a new problem. If this person was under protection, why were they pacing frantically every night? Why the circles in the dust, like someone trapped and desperate? Protected witnesses were supposed to be safe, relocated with new identities and support systems. They weren't supposed to be prisoners in dusty apartments, leaving desperate patterns in the floor. I started watching the building's entrances from my car parked across the street. 3 different people entered and left the supposedly empty apartment over the course of a week. None of them looked like they belonged in witness protection. They looked like handlers or guards. The final revelation came when I overheard a phone conversation in the manager's office. I'd gone to complain about a legitimate maintenance issue in my own apartment, but arrived as she was ending a call. "The asset is getting unstable," she was saying. "Keeps trying to communicate. We might need to consider relocation." Asset, not witness, not person. Asset. I realized then that I'd stumbled onto something far worse than witness protection. The person upstairs wasn't being protected, they were being held. The frantic pacing, the circular patterns, the desperate attempt to make noise that might alert someone like me. They were trying to signal for help. But who could I tell if law enforcement was involved, if this building was part of some official operation? Reporting it through normal channels would only alert the people responsible. The person upstairs would disappear entirely, relocated to a place where their footsteps wouldn't disturb curious neighbors. I still hear the pacing some nights, but now it sounds different, not random anxiety, but deliberate communication. Short patterns, long patterns, like code. I've been trying to decode it, to understand what they're trying to tell me. But every time I think I'm close to a breakthrough, the silence returns for days. The apartment above me might not be rented in any official sense, but someone lives there, trapped between floors like a secret the building keeps buried in plain sight, and I'm the only one who knows they exist. The question that keeps me awake isn't whether I should help them. It's whether I'm already too deep in their web to save either of us. Because lately, I've noticed cars parked outside my building that weren't there before. And sometimes, when I check my phone in the morning, there are photos in my gallery that I don't remember taking. Pictures of my own apartment, taken from angles that suggest someone else was holding the camera while I slept. Crime 6, at first I thought it was my imagination. A shirt felt just slightly off, a label I didn't remember, a sleeve an inch longer. Then it happened again and again. The stitching was identical, but the wear patterns weren't. One day I left a small tear in my jeans. The next morning they were pristine, but the thread wasn't mine. I marked my shoes. That mark disappeared. I set up hidden cameras. The footage showed me sleeping while a shadowy figure entered, opened my drawers and replaced everything gently, carefully, almost lovingly. I can't prove it. but I haven't worn anything from my closet since. The investigation started with fabric softener. My clothes smelled different, not wrong, just different. A scent I couldn't place, something floral mixed with industrial detergent. I pressed the fabric against my nose, inhaling deeply, trying to identify that foreign smell clinging to what should have been familiar. My sister suggested I was losing my mind. My coworker laughed when I mentioned it, but I knew my own clothes the way you know your own skin. I began documenting everything. Photographs of each garment before I wore them, detailed notes about fabric texture, measurements with a ruler. The replacement process was sophisticated. Whoever was doing this had access to high-quality manufacturing equipment. The copies weren't cheap knockoffs, they were perfect replicas with subtle alterations. A pocket moved half an inch. A button changed from plastic to mother of pearl. Small improvements that made me question whether the originals had ever existed. The breakthrough came when I found a receipt in my jacket pocket, a receipt I'd never seen before from a dry cleaner I'd never visited. The paper was thin between my fingers, the ink slightly faded. The date was recent, but the garment description didn't match anything I remembered owning. I drove to the address, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The dry cleaner was tucked between a pharmacy and a sandwich shop, unremarkable except for the way the owner's eyes widened when I walked in. Recognition flickered across his face before he composed himself. He claimed he'd never seen me before, but his fingers drummed nervously on the counter while he spoke. Behind him, I glimpsed a rack of clothes that looked suspiciously familiar. I started following the owner after his shop closed. He drove to an industrial district, parking outside a warehouse with tinted windows. Through a crack in the loading dock, I watched him sort through bins of clothing, my clothing or clothes identical to mine. Other people worked alongside him, their movements methodical and practiced. They measured garments, took detailed photographs, made notes on clipboards. The operation was larger than I'd imagined. The worst part was discovering they knew everything about me. My size measurements were written on a whiteboard. Photographs of me wearing various outfits were pinned to a bulletin board. They had documentation of my shopping habits, my preferred brands, even my laundry schedule. Someone had been watching me for months, maybe years, collecting data about my most intimate daily routines. I confronted my landlord about building security. He became defensive, asking why I was so concerned about cameras. His questions felt too specific, too knowing. When I pressed him about who had access to my apartment, he mentioned routine maintenance visits I didn't remember authorizing. The maintenance company had no record of servicing my unit, but they confirmed receiving payment for work they'd never performed. The police report I filed disappeared from their system. The officer who took my statement claimed no such report existed when I called to follow up. My insurance company had no record of the claim I'd submitted for stolen property. Every official channel I pursued led to dead ends and missing documentation, as if my experience was being systematically erased. I hired a private investigator who lasted exactly 3 days before canceling our contract. She returned my retainer with a handwritten note suggesting I seek psychological help. When I pressed her for an explanation, she mentioned receiving information about my mental health history, information that didn't exist or shouldn't have existed. Someone was actively discrediting my investigation, poisoning every professional relationship I tried to establish. The clothes in my closet continued to change, gradually, subtly, but constantly. Colors became slightly more saturated, fits became marginally more flattering. The quality improved incrementally as if someone was upgrading my wardrobe without permission. I started sleeping in the same outfit every night, but even those clothes would be different when I woke up. The fabric would feel softer, the seams would be reinforced, small tears would be invisibly mended. My sleep patterns became erratic as paranoia took hold. I installed additional locks, motion sensors, even scattered flour on the floor to detect footprints. Every morning the flour was undisturbed, the sensors showed no activity, the locks remained secure, yet my clothes continued their subtle transformation. I began to suspect that whoever was doing this had access I couldn't comprehend or defend against. The final revelation came through my neighbor's security camera. The footage showed me entering and leaving my apartment at impossible times, carrying laundry bags I didn't remember handling. The timestamp indicated I was moving around my building during hours when I was certain I'd been asleep. Either the footage was fabricated, or someone who looked exactly like me was orchestrating this entire operation. I stopped wearing the clothes entirely, purchasing new garments and storing them in a safety deposit box. But even those items began showing signs of alteration. The bank security footage was corrupted whenever I accessed my box. The replacement clothes I bought online arrived with subtle modifications I hadn't ordered. The conspiracy seemed to adapt to every countermeasure I implemented. Now I wear the same disposable paper gown every day, the kind used in medical examinations. It's the only garment I trust because it's designed to be thrown away. But sometimes late at night, I catch myself wondering if even this flimsy protection is exactly what someone wants me to believe I'm wearing. The truth might be that I haven't worn real clothes in months, that everything touching my skin is part of an elaborate deception I can't see or understand. The worst part isn't the violation of privacy or the systematic gaslighting. It's the nagging suspicion that whoever is doing this genuinely believes they're helping me. The improvements to my wardrobe suggest someone who cares about my appearance, my comfort, my daily experience. They're not stealing from me, they're upgrading me, one garment at a time, whether I want it or not. I've stopped looking for answers because every investigation leads deeper into questions I'm not sure I want answered. The clothes in my closet hang there, pristine and perfect, waiting for me to surrender to whatever vision someone else has for my life. Some mornings I almost do. Crime 7, the plastic plate on the wall was loose, barely noticeable, but when I touched it, I felt resistance. Inside was a small microphone wired to a battery. It had been recording long enough to fill the card inside. I played it back, hours of audio, my conversations, my phone calls, even moments when I wasn't speaking at all. Breathing, movement, silence. I traced the wire into the wall, but it didn't connect to power. It led into the ceiling. A service panel, inaccessible without a key, was padlocked shut. The next day the microphone was gone, but now the light flickers even when the switch is off. I should have called the police immediately. Instead, I sat on my couch, staring at that wall switch, wondering how long someone had been listening. The device was small, professional grade, not something you'd find at an electronics store. Whoever placed it knew what they were doing. They had access to my apartment, understood the wiring, and possessed equipment that suggested this wasn't their first time. My lease agreement mentioned maintenance visits, but I couldn't recall anyone working on electrical issues. The property manager, a woman with tired eyes and calloused hands, kept meticulous records. When I asked about recent service calls, she flipped through a thick binder, her finger tracing down columns of dates and descriptions. Nothing for my unit in months. Her expression shifted when I mentioned the microphone. She became defensive, almost aggressive, insisting no unauthorized personnel had keys to tenant units. But someone had been inside. Someone had carefully removed that wall plate, installed recording equipment, and sealed it back up so seamlessly I never noticed. The thought made my skin crawl, knowing every private conversation, every phone call with family, every moment of solitude had been captured and stored on that tiny memory card. I began checking other outlets, other switches. The bathroom fan cover had been recently disturbed, fresh fingerprints on metal that should have been dusty. Behind the refrigerator, I found a small hole drilled through the wall, just wide enough for a wire. It led to the adjacent apartment, which had been vacant for 2 months according to building records. The previous tenant in that unit had left suddenly, abandoning personal belongings that maintenance eventually discarded. I remembered the boxes they carried out, filled with technical equipment I couldn't identify. Electronic components, cables, devices that seemed more sophisticated than typical household items. At the time, I assumed he worked in IT or telecommunications. Now I wondered if his departure coincided with something else entirely. My neighbor across the hall, an elderly man who spent most days watching through his peephole, claimed he'd seen maintenance workers in the vacant apartment recently. But when pressed for details, his story became inconsistent. First he said they wore uniforms, then mentioned plain clothes. He described them as young, then corrected himself, saying they were middle-aged. His confusion seemed genuine, but something about his nervousness suggested he knew more than he was sharing. The audio recordings haunted me. Whoever had been listening knew my routines, my habits, my vulnerabilities. They'd heard me cry during difficult phone calls, laugh at television shows, talk to myself when I thought no one was listening. The intimacy of that violation felt worse than any physical theft. They possessed fragments of my life I couldn't reclaim or erase. I started documenting everything, photographing outlets, noting which screws appeared recently turned, measuring gaps between wall plates and drywall. A pattern emerged. Multiple locations showed signs of tampering, all accessible from the vacant apartment next door. Whoever had done this had spent considerable time preparing, mapping my living space, identifying optimal placement for surveillance equipment. The property manager grew increasingly hostile when I pressed for information about the previous tenant. She claimed tenant privacy prevented her from sharing details, but her reluctance seemed deeper than professional obligation. When I mentioned involving authorities, she became agitated, insisting the building had never experienced security breaches. Her hands shook as she spoke, and she avoided eye contact entirely. I researched the building's ownership history. The property had changed hands 3 times in recent years, each sale occurring under circumstances that seemed unusual. Legal disputes, insurance claims, complaints filed with housing authorities. One former resident had reported harassment and surveillance, but later withdrew their complaint. Another had broken their lease early, citing safety concerns they refused to specify. The vacant apartment's lease records were incomplete. The previous tenant's application contained inconsistencies, employment verification that didn't match, references that led to disconnected numbers, a background check that seemed cursory at best. Either the screening process was deliberately overlooked, or someone had fabricated credentials convincing enough to pass inspection. Days passed, the flickering light became more frequent, more erratic. Sometimes it would pulse in patterns that seemed almost like code. I began recording these episodes, timing their duration, noting their intensity. The patterns were too consistent to be random electrical issues, too purposeful to be coincidental. Someone was still controlling something in my walls. Sleep became impossible. Every sound made me question whether new equipment had been installed, whether someone was still listening. I swept my apartment repeatedly, finding nothing, but the absence of evidence didn't bring relief. Professional surveillance equipment could be virtually undetectable, especially if installed by someone with expertise and access. The truth hit me gradually, like pieces of a puzzle assembling themselves without my conscious effort. The previous tenant hadn't moved out. He'd simply relocated next door into an apartment that remained officially vacant while providing perfect access to my living space. The property manager wasn't incompetent or defensive, she was complicit. The building's history of disputes and broken leases wasn't coincidental, it was systematic. I was living in a laboratory. My privacy, my conversations, my daily routines were being studied, recorded, analyzed by someone who had turned surveillance into an art form. The microphone I'd discovered wasn't the beginning of their interest in me, it was just the first piece of equipment I'd been meant to find. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it brought an odd sense of clarity. I understood now why previous tenants had left suddenly, why complaints were withdrawn, why lease records were incomplete. The question wasn't how to stop this surveillance, it was whether I was brave enough to discover why I'd been chosen as a subject, and what they planned to do with everything they'd learned about me. That night, as the light flickered in its deliberate pattern, I spoke directly to whoever was listening. I told them I knew they were there, that I'd figured out their system, that I was ready to understand what came next. The flickering stopped immediately. For the first time in weeks, my apartment fell completely silent. But silence, I was learning, could be the most unsettling sound of all. Crime 8, my bedroom closet isn't very deep, but I noticed the back wall sounded hollow. After some light hammering, a panel came loose, revealing another door, wooden rotting with a tarnished knob. I opened it, expecting insulation. Instead, I found a small room. A chair, a camera on a tripod, and against the wall, dozens of VHS tapes labeled with units from my building. Including mine. I don't own a VCR, but I borrowed one. The footage was rough, static, long stretches of silence. But then I saw myself brushing my teeth, sleeping, undressing. The door now won't shut, no matter what I try. The musty smell from that hidden room followed me everywhere after that discovery. It clung to my clothes, settled in my throat, made me gag during meals. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me for months, maybe years, documenting my most private moments through equipment I never knew existed. The camera lens pointed directly at what I now realized was a carefully concealed hole in my bedroom wall, barely visible behind my dresser. I started going through the tapes systematically. Each one bore a handwritten label with apartment numbers. The handwriting was neat, precise, almost mechanical. Some tapes were dated from years ago, back when the previous tenant lived here. Others were recent, spanning the entire duration of my lease. The person behind this had been at it for a long time, and they were methodical about it. The building manager claimed he knew nothing about the hidden room. His face went pale when I showed him photos, and he kept wiping his palms on his pants while we talked. He mentioned that the building had been renovated several times over the decades, with walls moved and spaces reconfigured. Someone could have created that room during any of those renovations and kept the secret to themselves. I began watching my neighbors differently. The elderly woman who always seemed to know when packages arrived for other tenants. The maintenance worker who had keys to every unit and often worked alone. The quiet tenant from the floor above who I'd occasionally hear moving around at odd hours. Any of them could have had access to the space behind my closet. The tapes revealed disturbing patterns. Whoever was recording knew my schedule intimately. They knew when I showered, when I slept, when I left for work. The camera would sometimes zoom in on specific activities, focusing on moments when I was most vulnerable. Some recordings captured me during phone conversations, and I realized that my voice was being recorded too, though I couldn't figure out how. I found myself checking the hidden door obsessively. No matter how hard I pushed, it wouldn't close completely anymore. Something about opening it had damaged the mechanism, leaving a permanent gap that let cold air seep through. The draft carried that same musty odor, a constant reminder of what I discovered. The police took my report but seemed skeptical about the investigation's potential. They collected some of the tapes as evidence and dusted the hidden room for fingerprints, but warned me that cases like this were difficult to prosecute without identifying the perpetrator. They suggested I change my locks and consider moving, as if the problem were that simple to solve. I started noticing small things that hadn't registered before. Scuff marks on my bedroom wall that could have been from someone accessing the hidden space. The way certain floorboards creaked in a pattern that might indicate regular foot traffic in areas where I rarely walked. How my apartment key sometimes felt loose in the lock, as if someone had made copies and worn down the mechanism through repeated use. The building's rental history showed multiple short-term tenants in my unit over the years. People who moved out suddenly, often breaking their leases early. I began to wonder if they had discovered what I found, or if something had driven them away before they could. The landlord's records were incomplete, with gaps in documentation that seemed deliberately obscured. Sleep became impossible in my bedroom. I moved to the living room couch, but even there I felt exposed. The knowledge that someone had been watching me for so long made every shadow suspicious, every sound potentially threatening. I installed new locks, covered the hole in my bedroom wall, even considered boarding up the hidden door permanently. But the tapes kept calling to me. There were so many I hadn't watched yet, documenting not just my life, but the lives of other tenants, other victims. Some showed people who appeared to be having private conversations with someone off camera, as if they knew they were being recorded. Others captured what looked like staged scenes, people performing for the hidden camera in ways that seemed unnatural. The most disturbing tape had no apartment number label. It showed the hidden room itself, but from a different angle, as if there were multiple cameras. In this footage, someone was sitting in the chair, watching the monitors that I hadn't noticed during my first discovery. The person's face was obscured by shadows, but their posture suggested familiarity with the space, comfort with the routine of watching. I realized that the hidden room might not be the only secret space in the building. The way it was constructed, with careful attention to concealment and access, suggested someone with extensive knowledge of the building's layout. Someone who had been planning this surveillance operation for years, possibly decades. The building manager stopped returning my calls after our initial conversation. When I tried visiting his office, his assistant claimed he was unavailable, but I could hear his voice through the thin walls. He was discussing security deposits and lease renewals with someone, speaking in hushed tones about tenants who asked too many questions. I began documenting everything myself, creating my own recordings and photographs. If something happened to me, I wanted evidence of what I'd discovered. But as I gathered more information, the boundaries between victim and investigator started blurring. I found myself studying the surveillance footage with the same intensity that someone had once used to study me. The hidden door still won't close properly. Sometimes I catch myself staring at that gap, wondering if someone is still watching from the other side. The building feels different now, full of spaces I can't account for and neighbors whose motivations I can't trust. I know I should move, but leaving feels like abandoning the investigation before finding answers. The truth is probably simpler and more disturbing than I want to acknowledge. Someone in this building, someone I see regularly, has been living a double life as a voyeur and stalker. They might still be here, still watching, still recording. And despite everything I've discovered, I still don't know who they are. Crime 9, I was planting a small tree when my shovel hit something hard, a rusted tin box. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed and stained. It listed names, first and last, each one followed by a red check mark. I didn't recognize any of them until I searched online. 2 had been declared missing. One was a confirmed homicide, all from nearby. At the bottom was a final name, mine, no check mark. I've since been hearing noises outside my window. Someone's been moving things in my shed. I've started sleeping with a knife under my pillow. The paper felt strange between my fingers, almost brittle, like it had been folded and unfolded many times. The ink had faded to a rusty brown, but the handwriting was deliberate, careful, each letter formed with precision. This wasn't hurried scribbling. Someone had taken their time. I sat on my back porch that evening, laptop balanced on my knees, searching for the first name on the list. The woman had vanished from a grocery store parking lot. Her car was found running, purse still on the passenger seat. The second name belonged to a man who never returned from his morning jog. His family still posts anniversary appeals on social media. The third name led me to a news article that made my hands shake. A body found in a drainage ditch. Cause of death undetermined, but the detective quoted in the article mentioned signs of foul play. I kept scrolling, cross-referencing, checking and double-checking. The pattern was undeniable. Every name corresponded to someone who had either disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances, all within a 50-mile radius of my house, all within the past 5 years. Then I saw my own name at the bottom of that list. The cursor blinked on my screen as I stared at those familiar letters. My first and last name, written in the same careful handwriting as the others, but unlike the rest, no red check mark followed it, just empty space as if someone was waiting. I called the police that night. The officer who came to my house was younger than I expected, with tired eyes and a notepad that looked well used. He examined the box, photographed the paper, asked standard questions about when I found it and whether I recognized the handwriting. His tone was professional but skeptical. Old papers buried in backyards could mean anything. Kids playing pranks, previous homeowners with odd hobbies, mental illness, coincidence. But he took the evidence anyway, promising to run the names through their database and get back to me. The first noise came 3 nights later, a soft scraping sound outside my bedroom window, like something being dragged across gravel. I peered through the blinds but saw only shadows cast by the streetlight. The motion sensor light in my backyard remained dark. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was just a raccoon or a stray cat. But when I went to my shed to get gardening tools, I noticed things weren't where I'd left them. The rake leaning against the wrong wall. A bag of fertilizer moved several inches to the left. Small changes that someone else might not notice, but I've always been particular about organization. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The neighbor across the street, who seemed to spend an unusual amount of time watering plants that were already dead. The mail carrier who lingered too long at my mailbox, occasionally glancing toward my windows. The elderly woman who walked her dog past my house twice each morning and twice each evening, always at the same pace, always looking straight ahead except for quick glances at my front door. The police officer called back after a week. The names on the list did indeed match missing persons cases and one homicide. They were opening an investigation, he said, but cautioned me that the paper itself might not be connected to any actual crimes. People collected newspaper clippings about local tragedies for various reasons. The fact that my name appeared on the list was concerning, he admitted, but not necessarily evidence of imminent danger. I appreciated his honesty, but it didn't help me sleep. The second incident happened while I was at work. I returned home to find my back door unlocked. I always lock it, always. I searched every room, checked every window, looked through every closet and cabinet. Nothing was missing. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but the house felt different, like someone had been breathing in my space. That evening, I installed additional locks and a security camera system. The cameras were small, discreet, positioned to cover all approaches to my house. I told myself it was a reasonable precaution, nothing more. But when I reviewed the footage from the first night, I found something that made my stomach drop. At 2 in the morning, a figure had approached my shed. The image was grainy, the person wearing dark clothing and moving carefully to avoid the motion sensors. They spent nearly 20 minutes inside, but the angle of the camera didn't show what they were doing. I checked the shed the next morning. More items had been moved, tools rearranged. But now I noticed something else, fresh scratches in the wooden floor, as if someone had been digging or moving something heavy. The handwriting on that list haunted me. I found myself studying it during breaks at work, comparing it to writing samples I could find online. Old police reports sometimes included handwritten notes from suspects or witnesses. I spent hours scrolling through databases, looking for similar letter formations, particular ways of forming vowels and consonants. I started visiting places where the victims had last been seen. The grocery store parking lot where the first woman disappeared, the jogging trail where the man had vanished. I told myself I was conducting my own investigation, looking for clues the police might have missed. But honestly, I was trying to understand why someone would want to hurt these people. What connected them, besides their names on a list buried in my backyard? The grocery store manager remembered the missing woman. She'd been a regular customer, always polite, usually shopped alone. Security footage from that day showed her loading groceries into her car, then walking back toward the store entrance as if she'd forgotten something. She never made it back to her car. The jogging trail yielded less information. Too many people used it regularly for anyone to remember one specific person from months ago. But I walked the entire route, noting places where someone could easily intercept a lone jogger. Dense trees on both sides, limited visibility from the road, perfect for someone who didn't want to be seen. The third victim, the one whose body was found, had lived only 6 blocks from my house. I drove past the address several times before working up the courage to knock on the door. The current residents were a young couple who'd moved in after the death. They knew little about what happened, but the woman mentioned that neighbors had always thought the victim lived alone. It wasn't until after the body was discovered that police learned about frequent visitors who came and went at odd hours. I spent that evening staring at the list again, trying to find patterns, age ranges, physical descriptions, daily routines. The missing woman was in her 40s, divorced, worked as a bank teller. The missing man was younger, single, worked construction. The deceased had been retired, lived alone, kept odd hours. No obvious connections beyond geography. But someone had connected them. Someone had written their names with careful precision and marked them off one by one. The security cameras caught another visitor on the 5th night. This time the figure was more brazen, approaching from the front of the house and walking directly to my mailbox. They stood there for several minutes, not retrieving mail but apparently reading my address placard. Then they walked around the entire perimeter of my property, keeping to the shadows but clearly surveying every entrance and exit. I called the police again. Same officer, same professional tone, but this time he seemed more concerned. The footage was clear enough to show general body type and height, though facial features remained obscured. They would increase patrols in my neighborhood, he promised, and follow up on the investigation into the names on the list. But I could tell from his voice that the case wasn't their top priority. No actual crime had been committed against me. No direct threats had been made. A piece of paper and some suspicious activity weren't enough to justify round-the-clock protection. The knife under my pillow became a nightly ritual. I would check all the locks twice, review the camera footage, then lie in bed listening to every sound the house made. Old pipes settling, wind through tree branches, the occasional car passing on the street. But sometimes, mixed in with those familiar sounds, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate movement around my house, testing windows, trying door handles, waiting. During one of my sleepless nights, I made a decision that probably wasn't wise. I was going to confront whoever was watching me. The next time they appeared on my cameras, I would go outside and demand answers. I was tired of being afraid in my own home. I didn't have to wait long. 3 nights later, the figure returned. This time they lingered near my back door, trying the handle multiple times as if hoping I'd forgotten to lock it. I grabbed the knife, took a deep breath, and stepped outside. "I know you're there," I called into the darkness. "I've seen you on my cameras. What do you want?" The footsteps stopped, silence stretched between us, thick and oppressive. Then from somewhere near my shed, a voice answered, calm, measured, almost friendly. "I want to finish my list." I never saw their face. By the time I worked up the courage to approach the shed, they were gone, but they'd left something behind. Scratched into the wooden door, barely visible unless you knew where to look, was a single red check mark. The police found no fingerprints, no DNA evidence, no clear indication of who had been visiting my property. The investigation into the names on the list remained open but had yielded no solid leads. They could offer me victim protection services, the officer explained, but without a clear and immediate threat, their options were limited. I moved out of that house the following week. Found a temporary rental across town while I decided what to do next. But I kept the cameras running at the old place, partly out of curiosity and partly because I wanted to know if my tormentor would return. They did. Every few nights the same figure would appear, walking the perimeter of the empty house as if searching for signs of my return. Sometimes they would approach the windows, cupping their hands against the glass to peer inside. Other times they would simply stand in the backyard, motionless for long periods. I started researching the previous owners of my house, property records going back decades, police reports filed from that address, missing persons cases that might have any connection to the property. The work was tedious and often fruitless, but I was looking for anything that might explain why someone had chosen my backyard to bury their list. What I found was disturbing but not conclusive. Over the past 15 years, 3 different families had lived in that house before me. All had moved out unexpectedly, citing vague concerns about the neighborhood or sudden job relocations. One family had filed multiple police reports about prowlers and break-in attempts, but no arrests were ever made. The pattern suggested someone had been watching that house for years, cycling through residents, perhaps waiting for the right opportunity or the right victim. The buried list might have been their way of keeping score, documenting successful hunts while planning future ones. But none of this explained why my name had been added to their collection. I've been in the rental house for 2 months now. The cameras at my old place still show regular visits from my uninvited guest. They've started leaving things behind. Small objects placed deliberately where I'll notice them when reviewing footage. A pen identical to one I used to keep by my phone. A coffee mug that matches the set in my kitchen. A book I'd been reading, left open to the page where I'd stopped. They know things about me, personal details that suggest they've been watching far longer than I initially realized. The implications are terrifying, but also strangely clarifying. This isn't random. I wasn't chosen arbitrarily. Someone has been planning this for a very long time. The question that keeps me awake now isn't whether they'll find me at my new address. It's whether they already know exactly where I am and are simply waiting for the right moment to add that final check mark to their list. Sometimes late at night, I think I hear footsteps outside my rental house too. Story 10. Renovations always have a way of unveiling the unexpected. Hidden treasures, forgotten relics, whispers of the past. When Sarah and Michael decided to renovate their new home, a beautiful Victorian-era house with a storied past, they never anticipated stumbling upon a mysterious letter tucked beneath the floorboards. The paper was fragile, the ink faded with time, yet the words were stark. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before they could comprehend the gravity of the message, the eerie sound of 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the empty rooms, sending shivers down their spines. Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, arrived at the scene with her partner. The floorboards lay open, revealing a hidden space below. With practiced hands, she retrieved the note, already tainted by the touch of the bewildered couple. Reed observed Sarah and Michael closely as they recounted the chilling experience of the knocking sound, sensing the genuine fear that gripped them. A deep dive into the history of the house uncovered a tangled web of secrets. The property had been owned by the Hargrove family for generations, left abandoned after the passing of the last inhabitant, Margaret Hargrove. Despite a seemingly unassuming past, there was an unsettling aura surrounding the house. Forensic analysis of the cryptic note indicated it was penned 2 decades prior, hinting at a time of distress and fear. As Reed delved further into the lives of the Hargroves, a troubling narrative began to emerge. Franklin Hargrove, a respected teacher and woodworker, had a dark shadow looming over him in the form of a mysterious collector, Victor Mercer. Through interviews and archival research, Reed uncovered a tale of gambling debts, threats, and a tragic turn of events. Franklin's refusal to sell the house to settle his debts led to a fatal confrontation, resulting in the disappearance of Victor Mercer, the enigmatic collector. Margaret's sister, in a rare moment of lucidity, revealed the haunting truth of the relentless knocking and the sinister presence that haunted them. As the investigation progressed, the truth slowly came to light. Beneath the house, hidden from prying eyes, lay the remains of Victor Mercer, a victim of past vendettas and buried secrets. Margaret's diaries, unearthed from the attic, provided a glimpse into the harrowing aftermath of the fateful night, where fear and guilt consumed her every waking moment. The case, decades cold, found its resolution in the discovery of long-buried truths. Justice, though delayed, was finally served as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark history, opted to part ways with the property, leaving it abandoned, a silent witness to the events that transpired within its walls. Whispers among the locals spoke of ghostly echoes in the night, of 3 distinct knocks that pierced the stillness of the empty house. Whether it was the creaking of old timbers or a lingering presence from the past, the truth remained elusive. The ominous note, preserved as evidence, served as a haunting reminder. Don't trust the one who knocked. In the end, Detective Reed reflected on the enigmatic nature of the human heart, of the secrets we bury and the ghosts that linger. Some mysteries, she mused in her final report, are destined to remain unsolved, leaving us to wonder about the shadows that dwell in the depths of our history. Story 11. In the beginning, a mere flicker caught the mother's attention, a glitch in the baby monitor's feed that seemed innocent enough. She brushed it off as interference, a common occurrence in the realm of technology. But then the audio crackled, and a voice, soft yet chilling, whispered through the static, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A shiver ran down her spine, freezing her in place as her heart quickened its pace. Hastily, she dashed to her son's room, panic rising within her like a rising tide. But upon reaching the nursery, all she found was an empty crib, devoid of the precious bundle that should have been nestled within. The room was undisturbed, the window firmly shut, the door securely locked. The only anomaly was the stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its unyielding black eyes fixated on her, almost accusatory in their gaze. Rebecca's world shattered in that moment. Her screams pierced the night, tearing through the silence like a blade, only to be met with silence in return. The neighbors, awakened by her anguished cries, summoned emergency services to the scene. When the authorities arrived, they discovered Rebecca cradling the stuffed rabbit, lost in a world of despair and disbelief on the nursery floor. Her infant son, Samuel, at a mere 4 months old, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that seemed impossible to fill. The investigation that followed was fraught with confusion and dead ends. No signs of forced entry marred the home, and the security system had stood guard throughout the fateful night. The baby monitor footage, upon closer inspection, revealed nothing of significance until the intrusion of that haunting voice and the ensuing static. The puzzle confounded investigators. How could someone breach a locked home, snatch a child, and disappear without a trace, leaving behind only a haunting whisper and a misplaced toy? Initially, suspicion fell heavily upon Rebecca. Her husband Daniel had been absent on business at the time of Samuel's disappearance, and their strained marriage cast a shadow of doubt upon her innocence. Medical records hinted at her struggles with postpartum depression, adding fuel to the speculative fire. The detectives, observing Rebecca's composed demeanor during questioning, found it disconcerting, deeming it an unnatural calm for a mother who had just lost her child. As the case unfolded, a glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness. Forensic analysis uncovered microscopic fibers on the nursery windowsill, foreign to the household textiles and clothing. These fibers bore the signature of a rare climbing rope, suggesting a skilled intruder had gained access to the second-floor nursery from the outside. The focus shifted, uncovering a trail of breadcrumbs that led towards a more sinister truth. Security footage from neighboring homes unveiled a shadowy figure skulking through the night, while a distinct footprint in the garden soil hinted at a specialized boot used by seasoned climbers and military personnel. Rebecca's innocence began to take shape as Daniel re-entered the spotlight, returning from his business trip with a bewildered expression that failed to mask the truth. Unusual calluses on his hands, coupled with his newfound hobby of rock climbing, raised eyebrows among the investigators. A closer look at the financial records painted a grim picture. Daniel had recently secured a substantial life insurance policy on Samuel. Suspicious phone calls to an unknown number, abruptly ceasing before the abduction, added another layer of darkness to the unfolding mystery. The revelation of Daniel's hidden second family in a distant community, unbeknownst to Rebecca, further muddied the waters. The turning point came with the baby monitor itself, a silent witness to the night's events. Digital forensics unveiled a malicious hacking of the device, manipulating the signal to broadcast the eerie voice remotely to the receiver by Rebecca's bedside. The threads of the investigation led to a nondescript basement where Samuel was discovered alive under the care of a woman named Elaine. Her vacant eyes betrayed a troubled past as she surrendered to the authorities, revealing a connection to Daniel that sent shockwaves through the case. Elaine, Daniel's first wife, harbored a deep-seated grievance from a miscarriage years prior. Consumed by jealousy and longing, she had monitored Daniel's life from afar, witnessing the blossoming of his new family with Rebecca. Denied her own chance at motherhood, she saw in Samuel a twisted opportunity to claim what she believed was rightfully hers. The web of deceit and betrayal unfurled, exposing a plan orchestrated by Daniel and Elaine to snatch Samuel, reap the insurance benefits, and forge a new life together. The trial that followed echoed with the weight of the truth. Enhanced audio from the baby monitor echoed through the courtroom, capturing not only the chilling whisper that had haunted Rebecca, but also the faint sound of Daniel's unmistakable cough, a damning piece of evidence that placed him at the scene of the crime he vehemently denied. The jury's verdict came swiftly, condemning Daniel and Elaine to the full extent of the law for their roles in the kidnapping, conspiracy, and endangerment of a child. Rebecca, scarred by the ordeal, sought solace in a fresh start, far from the shadows of the past. Samuel, too young to remember the night that tore their family asunder, embarked on a journey of healing alongside his resilient mother. The case left a lasting impact on the investigative landscape, prompting a reevaluation of security measures in nurseries and a heightened awareness of the vulnerabilities posed by modern technology. Locked away in a box in Rebecca's closet, the stuffed rabbit stood as a silent sentinel of the truth, its glassy eyes reflecting the horrors that had unfolded under the watchful gaze of the baby monitor. The device, a silent witness to the darkness that lurked within the sanctity of a home, had unveiled a reality that defied comprehension, a tale of betrayal, loss, and the enduring strength of a mother's love. Story 12: The Secrets of the Hidden Room. The old library, with its fate sealed for demolition, held a mysterious secret waiting to be unearthed. As the workers labored to dismantle the structure, a serendipitous stumble revealed a hidden latch nestled within a dusty bookshelf. With a gentle click, the bookshelf swung open, exposing a concealed passageway leading to a forgotten chamber. The air within was heavy, stagnant with the passage of time, untouched by human hands for decades. In the center of the room, a solitary chair stood, anchored firmly to the floor, stark in its simplicity amidst the emptiness that surrounded it. Etched repeatedly on the walls in a haunting repetition was the chilling declaration, "I am still here." The construction foreman, sensing the gravity of the discovery, promptly contacted the authorities. What had commenced as a routine demolition swiftly morphed into a sinister enigma that gripped all who beheld it. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, found himself facing a scene unlike any he had encountered before. Standing at the threshold of the hidden room, his flashlight pierced the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the cryptic message that adorned the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice resonating in the confined space. "Let nothing be disturbed until the forensic team arrives." The history of the library added a layer of intrigue to the unfolding mystery. Once owned by the esteemed Harrington family, the library had been gifted to the public following the unexplained disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing during her final year of college, Rebecca had left behind a void shrouded in mystery, with only her abandoned car discovered near the edge of the woods. Despite exhaustive efforts, the truth of her fate remained elusive, leaving her family grappling with the agonizing uncertainty of her absence. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, they unearthed traces of hair and fibers embedded in the aged chair. The scratches on the walls harbored faint remnants of blood and skin cells beneath layers of dust, hinting at a tumultuous struggle endured by an unknown captive. Initial analysis indicated that the biological remnants belonged to a young female, raising chilling questions about the room's sinister purpose. Walsh, driven by an insatiable curiosity, delved into the annals of the Harrington family's past. The timing of the library's donation following Rebecca's disappearance struck a disquieting chord within him, hinting at a connection that begged to be unraveled. Further probing unearthed a disconcerting revelation. The contractor responsible for installing the bookshelf had close ties to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the patriarch of the family. Financial records hinted at clandestine dealings that exceeded the boundaries of mere renovation expenses. Former library staff, astounded by the hidden chamber's revelation, shared fragments of their memories. One elderly librarian recollected Maxwell's peculiar fixation on preserving the untouched section of the building, attributing it to his reverence for its historical significance. However, the veil of secrecy that shrouded Maxwell's actions began to unravel with each revelation. The breakthrough came when DNA analysis conclusively linked the biological evidence from the hidden room to Rebecca's genetic profile, extracted from a hairbrush recovered from her former bedroom. The pieces of the grim puzzle fell into place. A horrifying narrative of imprisonment and betrayal emerged, implicating a member of her own family in her tragic fate. Armed with a warrant, detectives descended upon the Harrington estate, unearthing a damning piece of evidence concealed within Maxwell's study, a leather-bound journal chronicling his obsessive fixation on his niece. The final entry, chilling in its stark admission, laid bare the truth of Rebecca's captivity and demise at the hands of her own kin. Confronted with irrefutable proof, Maxwell's veneer of denial shattered, revealing the dark depths of his depravity. She threatened to expose everything, he confessed hollowly, his words laden with the weight of his sins. In a moment of chilling candor, he disclosed the harrowing events that had transpired within the hidden room, culminating in a fatal act born of desperation and deceit. Beneath the floor of the concealed chamber, ground-penetrating radar uncovered the grim reality of Rebecca's fate, a poignant testament to the horrors she had endured in her final moments. As her skeletal remains were unearthed, clad in the silver bracelet bestowed upon her by her grieving parents, the echoes of her silenced voice reverberated through the somber halls of justice. The Harrington family, witnesses to the reckoning of their own patriarch, bore the weight of a legacy tainted by treachery and tragedy. Amidst the ruins of the halted library demolition, a poignant memorial emerged, adorned with floral tributes that spoke of remembrance and closure. Rebecca's poignant message, etched in desperation upon the walls, "I am still here," resonated as a haunting reminder of a life extinguished too soon, yet immortalized in the pursuit of justice that had finally come to pass. Story 13. The tale began in a time-worn costume emporium, its shelves barren as it prepared to shutter its doors for the final time. Among the relics being sold off, a woman's hand reached out to pluck a mask from a forgotten corner, its delicate features possessing an eerie lifelike quality. As she approached the cashier, a sense of unease settled in the air, prompting a hesitant murmur from the attendant, "That's not ours." Bewildered, she turned over the mask, searching for a tag that was nowhere to be found. With a nonchalant shrug, she carried the mysterious mask to her abode. When night cast its shadow over the world, a soft, rustling sound stirred her from slumber. The whisper of fabric shifting beckoned her to open her eyes. To her astonishment, the mask was no longer perched upon her dresser where she had left it. Instead, it sat ominously on her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her. In a neighboring house, a concerned neighbor stumbled upon an eerie scene the following morning. The front door stood ajar, allowing the gentle morning light to spill into the darkened interior. Seeking to return a borrowed book, the neighbor discovered a chilling tableau that would perplex investigators for years to come. Catherine Reed, the woman who had brought the mask into her home, lay lifeless upon her bedroom floor. The mask vanished without a trace. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, a solemn figure amidst the hushed tones of the forensic team as they meticulously documented the room. The rhythmic clicks of the shutters played a haunting melody in the background. No signs of forced entry, an officer remarked, jotting down observations in his notebook. The detective, with a keen eye for detail, scanned the room for clues. A partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass on the nightstand, mundane yet unsettling details in the wake of tragedy. The medical examiner, his expression grave, knelt beside Catherine's body, his examination yielding no immediate answers. Cause of death unclear upon initial inspection. No visible wounds, no signs of struggle, he intoned, drawing attention to the frozen mask of terror etched upon her features. As Detective Morgan bent closer, a whispered realization escaped her lips. Something frightened her to death. Catherine had lived a life shrouded in quietude as an art appraiser, renowned for her meticulous eye for authenticity. Colleagues spoke of her uncanny ability to discern the genuine from the counterfeit with unparalleled precision. Could her discerning gaze have unwittingly led her down a path to her demise? A peculiar discovery emerged from security footage of the costume shop, revealing the cashier's genuine bewilderment at the sight of the mask. Consultation with the shop owner only deepened the mystery, as he disavowed any knowledge of such a peculiar item ever gracing their inventory. A disquieting revelation surfaced as he divulged the mask's origins, tied to a collector who had met a demise steeped in enigmatic circumstances. A breakthrough in the investigation came with the unearthing of microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips, hinting at a desperate struggle before her untimely passing. The peculiar fibers, a blend of human hair and an unidentifiable organic substance, defied all attempts at classification within known databases. The trail of inexplicable deaths linked to the acquisition of similarly eerie masks spanned decades, each victim bearing the same expression of unadulterated terror and death. Retired detectives, privy to past investigations, shared their insights with Detective Morgan, unveiling a sinister connection, an ancient ritual of soul transference tied to the cryptic symbols concealed within the masks. A pivotal revelation surfaced in the form of a clandestine journal hidden within Catherine's dwelling, detailing her growing unease and the unsettling presence she felt lurking within her home. Her meticulous research into the mask's origins unveiled a harrowing truth, a malevolent entity that sought out new hosts through the vessel of the cursed masks, claiming lives in a macabre cycle of possession. The medical examiner's final verdict of death by cardiac arrest induced by extreme fear posed a chilling question. What specter could evoke such terror as to still a beating heart? Surveillance footage from a vigilant neighbor's abode unveiled a figure, cloaked in darkness, departing Catherine's residence, donned in a mask that mirrored her likeness, yet moved with an unnatural mechanical precision. The search for the elusive mask led investigators on a nationwide pursuit, culminating in its discovery in a remote vintage shop already sold to an unknown buyer. The mystery deepened as the trail went cold, leaving the case officially unresolved. Detective Morgan safeguarded Catherine's journal as a testament to the enigmatic forces that lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim their next unwitting victim. The dead of night, a spectral unease lingered in the detective's thoughts, a silent reminder of the malevolent entity that prowled in the darkness. She would startle awake, a sense of being watched gripping her heart. Securing her abode against the unknown, she dared not dwell on the mask's inevitable return, its hollow gaze fixated on the inevitable passage of time. The cursed mask, a vessel hungry for souls, lay dormant, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its endless cycle of terror. Story 14. In the quiet of her bathroom, she wiped away the steam from the mirror, expecting to see her own reflection staring back at her. Yet as her eyes met the familiar image, a subtle unease crept over her. Her face appeared unchanged, her clothes in their usual place. But there was something amiss, a flicker at the edge of her vision, a movement not of her own making. Turning away, she felt a lingering gaze from the mirror, a silent watcher in the stillness. Thus began the enigmatic tale of Rebecca Thorne, unfolding in the shadows of her modest apartment nestled in a peaceful suburban enclave. Known for her meticulous nature and solitary demeanor, Rebecca led a life of precision and routine, her days revolving around the structured world of data analysis for a mid-sized company. No one could have foreseen that she would soon become entangled in a mystery that would baffle investigators and cast a long shadow over the community for years to come. The first signs of disturbance were subtle, easily dismissed as quirks of forgetfulness. Objects in Rebecca's home began to shift, a coffee mug relocated, books rearranged, her toothbrush out of place. Initially attributing these anomalies to fatigue from her demanding work schedule, she paid little heed until the disruptions grew persistent, gnawing at the edges of her consciousness. It was Detective Marion Shaw who first received Rebecca's tentative plea for help, a whisper amidst the cacophony of routine police reports. At first glance, the incidents appeared benign, lacking tangible evidence of criminal activity. Merely the concerns of a woman adrift in a sea of disconcerting changes within the sanctuary of her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the chilling bathroom mirror episode, recounted by Rebecca with a clarity that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned officers. Her reflection, a mimicry of her every move, seemed to possess a life of its own, an eerie doppelganger casting doubts on the boundaries of reality. As the investigation deepened, the enigma only grew more perplexing. Surveillance footage captured a doppelganger slipping into Rebecca's apartment, a perfect replica down to the smallest detail. The lines between truth and illusion blurred as forensic scrutiny revealed no signs of forgery or manipulation, leaving the authorities grasping at shadows in the dark. With each passing day, the disturbances escalated, insidious intrusions into Rebecca's life that defied conventional explanation. Items vanished, replaced by phantom imprints of a presence unseen. The fabric of her reality frayed, threads of uncertainty weaving a tapestry of disquietude around her. A breakthrough came with the revelation of a meticulously orchestrated pattern in the intrusions, a calculated dance of imitation choreographed to align with Rebecca's scheduled absences. The tendrils of obsession unfurled, revealing a sinister fixation that sought to usurp her very identity. The tendrils of obsession unfurled, revealing a sinister fixation that sought to usurp her very identity. In the labyrinthine depths of Lily Winter's abode, a macabre tableau unfolded, a shrine to Rebecca meticulously crafted with chilling precision. Photographs adorn the walls, capturing stolen moments of her existence, a grotesque mosaic of voyeurism turned obsession. The truth, when unearthed, painted a portrait of psychological descent, a descent into a dark abyss of delusion and yearning. Lily's disappearance cast a pall over the investigation, her phantom presence lingering like a specter in the shadows. And so, the narrative of Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters intertwined, a tale of duality and deception echoing through the annals of time. As the mystery remains unsolved, a haunting question lingers in the hushed corridors of memory, what lies beneath the surface of our identities, waiting to be unveiled in the stillness of the night. Story 15. In the quiet solitude of Sarah Winter's apartment, memories stirred like shadows in the night. A Polaroid aged by decades held secrets long forgotten, its snapshot capturing a birthday celebration of bygone days. Faces smiled, candles flickered in the soft glow, nothing out of the ordinary at first glance. But as Sarah inherited the box of old photos, a subtle unease crept into her heart. There, amidst the familiar faces of family, lurked a presence unseen before. A man, a mere silhouette in the background, lingered just beyond the reach of the candlelight. He stood apart, a dark figure half shrouded in mystery, a stranger in the midst of cherished memories. The discovery came to Sarah as she sifted through the remnants of her mother's life, tucked away in the attic's forgotten corners. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories held a treasure trove of faded photographs, each telling a story of days gone by. What should have brought comfort and nostalgia instead unveiled a chilling enigma. The man in the photos, a silent intruder in the tapestry of family gatherings, haunted her with his presence. With trembling hands, Sarah traced the progression of his appearance through the snapshots. In the first photo, he lingered at the periphery, a mere whisper of a figure during her 7th birthday party. Gradually, he advanced, moving from the shadows of the glass door to a place behind her uncle, unnoticed by all but the camera's lens. She reached out to her father, her voice quivering as she described the phantom presence haunting their family's past. But his confusion mirrored her own, for he could not place the mysterious man in the pictures. Seeking answers, Sarah turned to Detective Marcus Reed, a stalwart presence amid the shifting shadows of uncertainty. As the rain tapped softly against the windows of the precinct, Sarah laid out the evidence before him, each photo a piece of a puzzle she could not solve alone. The detective, with weathered hands and a keen gaze, studied the progression of the figure's movements with a growing sense of intrigue. The man's deliberate advance through the frames hinted at a purpose unseen, a sinister dance through frozen moments of time. Together they delved into the mystery, uncovering a trail of hidden truths buried beneath layers of forgotten years. The man in the photos, once a mere specter of the past, took on a chilling reality as details emerged under the scrutiny of modern technology. A scar, a ring, a reflection in a window, all pieces of a puzzle that led to a name long erased from memory. Robert Keller, a shadow from the past, a maintenance worker with a dark history of disappearances and unspoken horrors. With each revelation, the past unraveled before them, connecting unsolved cases across decades in a web of chilling coincidence. The man in the photos, now identified as Keller, had slipped through the cracks of justice, his presence a sinister thread woven through the lives of unsuspecting families. Sarah's world shifted, her once cherished memories tainted by the specter of a predator hiding in plain sight. As authorities unearthed long-buried secrets and closure came to families long haunted by uncertainty, Sarah sat alone in the quiet of her apartment, the weight of the past heavy upon her shoulders. The detective's call brought news of a grim discovery, a missing child finally given a name and a resting place. The shadows of the past had been exposed to the light of justice, the hidden figure in the family photos unmasked at last. Gathering the photos, each a piece of a puzzle now solved, Sarah placed them back in the box of memories. They were no longer relics of a forgotten past, but testaments to the enduring power of truth. The man in the photos, once a ghostly presence haunting her family's history, had been laid to rest by the relentless pursuit of justice. And as she closed the lid on the box, she knew that some shadows once seen could never be forgotten, their silent echoes lingering in the quiet spaces between moments of peace. Story 16, The Unseen Presence. They uncovered it in the attic, concealed beneath a worn blanket, a porcelain doll, fragile and aged, with its azure eyes painted wide and unwavering. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had recently acquired the Victorian house, stumbled upon it unexpectedly. They dismissed it with a chuckle, a mere overlooked relic. Yet that evening, as they retired to bed, an unsettling atmosphere enveloped them. The air grew dense, the quiet lingered, and come morning the doll was no longer in the attic. It now perched at the foot of their bed, silently observing. Sarah and Michael were captivated by the allure of the house, enticed by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure, despite whispers of a troubled past. Little did they know they were about to be entwined in its history. Detective Rachel Winters, on a crisp autumn day, received a call. A woman was found in the master bedroom, her body contorted in an unnatural stance, eyes wide with terror. Nearby, the male victim appeared to have been in a frantic attempt to flee. The crime scene was pristine, no forced entry, no signs of a struggle, only an eerie stillness. "The positioning is deliberate," Detective Winters murmured into her recorder as the scene was meticulously documented. "The female victim seems arranged, like a doll plucked from exhibition." The investigation commenced with interviews of neighbors. One elderly resident recalled glimpsing a shadow flit behind an upstairs window during the couple's supposed absence. Another mentioned nocturnal laughter akin to a child's echoing from the vacant house. Each testimony added a layer of disquiet to the unfolding mystery. Forensic analysis uncovered minuscule fibers throughout the resident's antique cotton and silk, akin to those used for doll clothing. The fibers were most concentrated around the victims and the attic. Absent were fingerprints, foreign DNA, or footprints. "It's as if the perpetrator was never physically present," remarked the lead analyst. The focus shifted to the property's past. Records unveiled a grim pattern. 3 previous owners met mysterious ends over 6 decades, their deaths shrouded in inexplicable circumstances. A newspaper clipping from long ago revealed a renowned doll maker and his deceased daughter, whose demise remained suspicious. The doll maker, before his demise, had fashioned a final doll, a replica of his daughter. Detective Winters unraveled a connection among all victims. They had made alterations to the attic, just as Sarah and Michael had commenced renovations before their demise. A breakthrough emerged from old photographs hidden in the attic, depicting the doll maker with his creations. One doll, resembling the one Sarah and Michael discovered, appeared to shift positions in successive images. Infrared scans disclosed hidden handprints and an enigmatic residue trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, an amalgam of porcelain dust and unidentifiable organic matter. A descendant of the dollmaker shared family lore of the dollmaker's use of unconventional methods, infusing his dolls with otherworldly essence acquired during his travels. "The most exquisite dolls," she murmured, "were more than mere playthings." The investigation hit a dead end. No suspects surfaced, no logical explanations sufficed. The case turned cold, though it lingered in the shadows of the precinct. Detective Winters, inexplicably disoriented, found her office empty of the doll she had secured as evidence. The house exchanged hands once more, its haunting reputation overshadowing its architectural grandeur. The new proprietors discovered the attic void, save for a neatly folded blanket in a corner, the doll nowhere to be found. Detective Winters retired prematurely, carrying a photograph of the dollmaker's collection, sealed in an envelope marked "Never Open." The new owners, opting to leave the attic undisturbed, reported no disturbances. Yet on tranquil evenings, whispers circulated of a faint figure behind the attic window and the distant echo of childlike laughter. Story 17. In the quiet stillness of the night, a tale unfolded within the walls of a Victorian-era home, whispering secrets to the new tenants, Michael and Sarah Klein. What began as a simple endeavor to peel away aging wallpaper soon revealed a hidden narrative woven through time, a narrative of intrigue and mystery. As Sarah traced her fingers along the peeling layers, a name emerged, etched in ink: Alina Winters. Each stroke of the pen seemed to carry a weight of its own, a story untold, a mystery unsolved. Who was Alina Winters, and why did her name adorn the walls in such a frantic manner? The couple delved into the depths of the past, seeking answers in the digital archives of a bygone era. And there, amidst the virtual pages, they stumbled upon a single thread connecting the present to a missing persons case from decades past. A woman, Alina Winters, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a haunting resemblance to the previous homeowner, Margaret Cavendish. As the night unfolded its cloak of shadows, Michael and Sarah's curiosity transformed into an insatiable hunger for truth. They embarked on a journey of investigation, peeling back not just layers of wallpaper, but layers of deception and illusion that shrouded the history of their home. The retired detective's voice crackled through the speakerphone, recounting the cold case of Alina Winters, a disappearance that had baffled the authorities and haunted the memories of those left behind. The walls of the old house bore witness to a story long forgotten, a story of a life lost and a soul in turmoil. Forensic teams descended upon the quaint residence, unraveling the tapestry of secrets hidden within its walls. The ink-stained confessions of a fractured mind came to light, revealing the true identity behind the facade of Margaret Cavendish, a persona crafted out of desperation and delusion. Beneath the floorboards, a trove of identities lay dormant, each a piece of a puzzle that had confounded even the most astute investigators. Alina Winters and Margaret Cavendish, intertwined in a dance of deception orchestrated by a mind fractured by darkness. As the truth emerged from the shadows, the once charming home became a stage for a chilling revelation. The remains unearthed from the garden told a tale of betrayal and tragedy, echoing through the corridors of time. And in the end, as the darkness gave way to the light of justice, the walls themselves bore witness to a story of redemption and closure, a story that would forever linger in the whispers of the night, a lullaby of mystery and intrigue, inviting those who listen to drift into the realm of dreams. Story 18. As she crossed the threshold, dust danced in the stillness of the abandoned house, a place forgotten by time. The walls, once proud, now stood peeling, and the furniture lay draped in ghostly sheets. Every step she took felt like a frozen moment, a loop in time, except for one peculiar detail: the doors. Each door she opened led back to the same parlor, trapping her in a bewildering cycle. No matter which handle she turned, she always found herself back where she started. The only way out seemed to be the way she came in. Yet, when she turned to retreat, the front door had vanished into thin air. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form turned the once curious Victorian into a haunting crime scene. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, observing as forensic technicians moved silently through the dim interior like spectral whispers. The house had earned a reputation among locals, a place where compasses spun wildly, where whispers of unseen eyes watching lingered in the air. Now it held secrets far darker than mere tales. The initial examination indicates she has been deceased for approximately 3 days, the medical examiner murmured, his words barely audible in the heavy silence. Evidence suggests asphyxiation as the cause of death. Morgan had been found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her gaze fixed on the entrance as though expecting a visitor. Her expression serene, hands neatly folded in her lap, no signs of struggle, no marks of defense. The scene exuded a chilling tranquility that unsettled even the most seasoned investigators. "Who stumbled upon the body?" Lind inquired, scanning her notes. A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers, her partner replied. They entered, spotted her seated there, mistaking her for an intruder until they drew closer. The house had remained empty since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly 5 years prior. Legal disputes had left the property abandoned, unwanted, forsaken save for vandals and the adventurous. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, had a fascination with spaces that defied conventional norms. Described by friends as diligent, driven, and captivated by the enigmatic, the abandoned Victorian, with its reputation for disorienting visitors, would have been irresistible to her. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days ago, Lind noted. Morgan mentioned exploring the house where people vanish for her research. Investigations unveiled that Morgan had frequented the house in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled bizarre acoustics, sudden chills in the air, and doors that seemingly led to different rooms with each opening. In her final entry, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to record what she termed spatial anomalies. However, this equipment remained conspicuously absent. During the autopsy, an unexpected revelation emerged: trace amounts of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant used in shamanic rituals. While the substance could induce disorientation and vivid illusions, the quantities found were insufficient to be fatal. She was not one to indulge in recreational substances, her partner attested during interrogation. Morgan was meticulous in her research practices. Deliberately distorting her senses would have been against her nature. Digital forensic analysis uncovered remnants of deleted exchanges on Morgan's phone. Dialogues with an individual sharing her intrigue with the house, someone claiming to possess insight into its enigmas. The conversations grew progressively intimate and enigmatic. The house retains its memories, one message disclosed. It longs for someone to comprehend. The investigation led Lynn to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had engaged in correspondence with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena had captured her attention, leading their professional rapport into a more personal realm. When questioned, Reeves appeared genuinely shattered by her passing. The house has a reputation, he disclosed. The original architect wove optical illusions and false perspectives into its design. It was crafted to bewilder and disorient. Morgan believed there was more to it, something beyond mere design tricks. Nevertheless, Reeves possessed a solid alibi for the estimated time of Morgan's demise. Surveillance footage depicted him delivering a lecture at a university symposium hours away. A breakthrough arrived from an unexpected source: Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, residing overseas. Upon contact by investigators, he unveiled a dark family secret concealed for generations. My grandmother was not the sole Blackwood to perish in that house, he divulged. There were others. Always discovered in the parlor, always appearing peaceful. The family dubbed it the Claiming. He furnished investigators with journals spanning decades, detailing deaths initially attributed to heart failure or strokes. The pattern was unmistakable: individuals spending extended periods in the house inevitably succumbed to what their family euphemistically termed the influence. A subsequent search of the property unveiled a concealed compartment behind the parlor hearth. Within, investigators unearthed Morgan's misplaced equipment and something more. A small chamber housing artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, arranged meticulously in a geometric pattern. At the center rested a sculpted effigy, its features worn smooth by generations of touch. Analysis identified the figurine as depicting a deity linked to liminal realms, gateways between worlds. Traces of the alkaloid discovered in Morgan's system were detected on the artifacts. The case took a somber turn when dust-patterned forensics within the house hinted at another presence during Morgan's demise. Partial fingerprints incongruent with Morgan's or any known visitor were retrieved from the doorknobs scattered throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the inquiry, Adam Reeves was found lifeless in his residence. Like Morgan, he sat facing the entrance, countenance tranquil, the same alkaloid present in his system. Clutched in his hand was a key that matched no lock in his apartment, but fit flawlessly into the hidden compartment within the Victorian. In his final missive, addressed to himself as if preserving a testament, Reeves inscribed, "The house does not ensnare you physically, it ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct, the doors lead where they always have, but something deceives you into believing you are in a loop. Once you grasp the verity, you can depart at will, yet by then you may no longer desire to. The case remains officially unresolved, categorized as suspicious fatalities under scrutiny. The Victorian has since been condemned, its access barred by authorities. Nevertheless, whispers persist of lights flickering within on certain nights and of visitors who vanish without a trace. Some locals maintain that the house seizes those who delve too deeply into its mysteries. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves stumbled upon something ancient and potent, residing in the margins between ordinary reality. The truth lingers as elusive as an escape in a house where all entrances laid back to the commencement. Story 19. The worn envelope lay upon the detective's desk, its edges tinged with age, yet the stamp brand new it had been sent mere days ago. With cautious hands, Detective Sarah Morgan slid it open. Inside, a single sheet of paper rested, its message hastily typed in an uneven, rushed font. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper felt damp to the touch, a lingering scent of iron clinging to it. Only upon closer inspection did the detective notice the reddish smear along the bottom edge. It was not ink. Carefully, Morgan placed the letter into an evidence bag, her gloved fingers moving with practiced precision. The forensics team's analysis confirmed her suspicions. The red stain was human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved homicide that had haunted the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been found in her apartment with multiple stab wounds, her laptop missing, her notes scattered. It hinted that the attack might have been linked to a story she was investigating. Despite numerous interviews and exhaustive investigations, the case had run cold. But now this mysterious letter had surfaced, addressed simply to the Homicide Division. The paper and envelope revealed minimal fingerprints, only faint smudges indicating the sender had worn gloves. The postmark provided a rare light. Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, walls adorned with crime scene photos, timelines, and profiles of suspects who had led them nowhere. Pinning the letter's image to the board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her longtime partner on the case, studied the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps they want us to believe they do," he countered. "The blood could be a macabre act, a taunt." The forensics team traced the typewriter's unique impressions to a model long out of production, a relic of the past, rare but not impossible to find. They began scouring antique shops and collectors across the region. As the investigation gained traction, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life. Her editor described her as relentless, devoted to uncovering corruption. Her last assignment involved probing a wealthy family entrenched in local politics. The patriarch's recent passing had stirred up familial discord, accusations of manipulation among the siblings. Interviewing Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, they noticed subtle changes in his demeanor since their last meeting. Rebecca thought someone was tailing her, he confessed. "I shrugged it off as paranoia from her investigation. I should have taken her seriously." As the detectives pursued this lead, a second letter arrived, bearing the same typewritten message, the same bloodstains. This time the confession was more revealing. She knew too much about the family, about the inheritance, about what happened to the old man. I never intended for it to escalate this far. The trail led them to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they questioned the eldest son, Richard. A collection of antique typewriters adorned his study. His explanation seemed rehearsed, his demeanor too composed. The breakthrough came with the discovery of microscopic fibers on the envelopes matching custom stationery used exclusively by the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Under scrutiny, Eleanor disclosed that Richard had borrowed her stationery weeks prior. A search of Richard's home unveiled a hidden chamber containing incriminating evidence clippings about Rebecca, surveillance photos, and a vintage typewriter identical to the one used for the letters. Blood analysis confirmed it belonged to Rebecca. Unexpectedly, a connection emerged between Richard and Michael. Financial records unveiled significant payments from Richard to Michael before Rebecca's murder. Confronted, Michael broke down. She found proof that Richard poisoned his father for the inheritance, he confessed. I informed Richard of her discovery, thinking it would deter her. I never imagined he'd go that far. The final puzzle piece fell into place with Eleanor's revelation of a clandestine recording. Captured conversations between Richard and Michael detailed their sinister plans for Rebecca. Richard's voice was unmistakable. She must be silenced permanently. Richard's arrest while attempting to flee sealed his fate. The prosecution built a solid case around the letters, the typewriter, the financial transactions, and Eleanor's damning recording. Michael struck a deal, offering testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. Throughout the trial, Richard professed his innocence, accusing Michael of framing him, but the weight of evidence was insurmountable. The jury swiftly returned a guilty verdict. As Richard was led away in chains, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents in the hushed courtroom. Though no words could ease their sorrow, the verdict brought a semblance of closure. The blood-stained letters remained preserved in evidence, a stark reminder that even the most meticulously planned crimes leave traces, and that remorse, whether genuine or strategic, can unravel the perfect crime. The case of Rebecca Warren became a pivotal lesson in detective training, illustrating that breakthroughs can arise from the simplest of clues, a weathered typewriter, and the burden of guilt weighing on a killer's soul. Story 20. In the quiet neighborhood, a house sat untouched for years, a silent witness to a mystery that lingered in the whispers of the wind. Stories passed among the neighbors spoke of a young woman who had vanished, leaving behind a void that echoed through the empty rooms. When new tenants arrived, drawn by fate or curiosity, they found a bedroom locked from within, as if frozen in time. With a sense of trepidation, they forced the door open, revealing a space shrouded in stillness, the air thick with the weight of forgotten years. The room bore the marks of abandonment, dust hanging in the air like memories, the bed neatly made, the mirror polished to a sheen. But amidst the quiet, a sense of unease crept in, a feeling that something lingered just beyond the visible. And there upon the desk, a solitary candle stood as a sentinel of the past, its wax melted away to nothingness, a silent witness to the passage of time. But it was not the candle that held the true secret of the room, it was the notebook, its pages whispering a tale long forgotten. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truths in the shadows, pored over the ink-stained pages while technicians sought answers in the lingering fingerprints of the past. The words within belonged to Elise Winters, a name etched in the annals of lost souls, a woman whose disappearance had left a void in the world. The handwriting, a reflection of a meticulous mind, told a story of fear and unseen threats. In faded ink, Elise had penned her final words, a chilling revelation of a looming danger. "I know he's watching me tonight," the page confessed, revealing a world of paranoia and impending doom. The detective closed the notebook, a piece of a puzzle that had long confounded the minds of many. Elise, a paralegal entangled in the web of a prestigious law firm's deceit, had unearthed secrets that threatened to shatter the faade of power. Her dedication to truth had led her down a path of darkness, where shadows danced with whispers of corruption and greed. The room she left behind was a canvas of contradictions, a snapshot of a life interrupted. As the investigation delved deeper, hidden truths began to emerge like ghosts from the shadows. A flash drive, a key, a safe deposit box, all pieces of a puzzle that painted a picture of betrayal and manipulation. The recordings whispered of lies and deceit, of a truth buried beneath layers of deception. And in the heart of it all stood Vincent Harriman, a man of power and privilege, whose hands bore the stains of a life lived in shadows. His actions spoke louder than words, his guilt a specter haunting the halls of justice. The evidence, though circumstantial, painted a damning portrait of a man consumed by his own hubris. But it was the room itself that held the final key to the mystery, a hidden passage, a gateway to the truth that had long eluded grasp. As the walls whispered their secrets to the detective's ears, a picture began to form, a tale of a woman's fight for justice, a battle against the darkness that sought to consume her. In the end, justice prevailed, as it often does in the quiet moments when truth finds its voice. Vincent Harriman's downfall was swift, his lies unraveling like threads in the wind. The room where Elise had made her last stand became a shrine to her memory, a testament to the power of one woman's courage. And so the house stood once more in silence, a relic of a past that refused to be forgotten. The light in the upstairs window flickered like a beacon in the night, a reminder of a woman who had dared to challenge the shadows. In the end, it was not the house that held the secrets, it was the room where justice found its voice in the silence of the night. Story 21. The apartment had stood vacant for months, a silent witness to time passing by. When the new tenants arrived, their expectations were modest dust, perhaps a few remnants of the past left behind. Yet one door remained stubbornly closed, a mystery waiting to unfold. It was a closet sealed shut from within. The landlord, with a sense of foreboding, finally managed to pry it open, revealing more than just forgotten belongings. The walls bore witness to a haunting tale, etched with deep, jagged scratches, a silent plea for freedom. In the dim corner lay an ancient flip phone, its screen still faintly illuminated by an unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the ways of darkness, felt a shiver crawl down her spine as she surveyed the scene. It wasn't the absence of blood or overt violence that unsettled her, but the silent screams of those marks of someone trapped, fighting against the confines of that small space. "We need forensics on site immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured every detail with his camera, "and bring me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone simply whispered, "I know what you did." The landlord, a man perpetually on edge, revealed that the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unresolved rent. "A quiet girl kept to herself. Left 6 months ago," he muttered, his eyes skirting the closet, a place he wished to forget. "No trouble caused." Forensics uncovered a chilling truth within the scratches on the walls, traces of blood, mostly belonging to a single individual, presumed to be the missing tenant. Emma Caldwell, aged 28, reported absent from her job when she vanished. However, 2 distinct DNA samples emerged, one unidentified, the other belonging to a man supposedly deceased for 2 years. "This can't be right," Shaw murmured, studying the unsettling findings. The apartment painted a poignant picture of a life-interrupted unopened mail, a lone coffee mug in the sink, a neatly arranged bed. Phone records revealed a sudden cessation of regular calls with her sister, replaced by numerous interactions with an unknown number before her disappearance. Her sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured Emma's final moments, entering her building trailed by a shadowy figure in a baseball cap, purposefully avoiding the cameras. A breakthrough came with the discovery of partial fingerprints on the closet door belonging to Derek Mercer, a man thought to be deceased. He staged his death, Shaw concluded, but why and what ties him to Emma? The enigmatic DNA sample led them to another missing woman, Lynette Porter, gone for 3 years. Clues intertwined, revealing a web of darkness shrouding Emma's disappearance. The investigation unraveled a grim narrative, pointing to a remote property owned by Mercer's kin. Behind imposing cellar doors, they unearthed Lynette Porter alive yet emaciated, a mirror image of Emma's captivity. "He forced me to watch," she murmured, haunted eyes vacant, "said I needed to learn the price of defiance." Evidence mounted against Mercer diaries detailing his obsession, photographs of his victims, and damning videos capturing Emma's torment. "No one betrays me," his voice echoed in the recordings. "No one reveals my secrets." The hunt for Derek Mercer spanned borders, a shadow slipping through the cracks. As authorities closed in, a chilling profile emerged. Mercer was not merely a killer, but a purveyor of anguish, reveling in the despair of confined souls. Upon his capture, Mercer maintained an eerie composure, deflecting blame with ease. "She sent that message herself," he coolly remarked. She yearned to be found, yet salvation eluded her. The trial peeled back the layers of Mercer's deception, exposing a macabre charade of vanished identities and calculated cruelty. Emma's fate remained a mystery, her final moments lost to the darkness she fought against. The jury swiftly delivered a verdict of guilt on all counts, condemning Mercer to a life behind bars. At the sentencing, Lynette Porter stood tall, a beacon of resilience in the face of darkness. "While he rots in his cell, I'll bask in the light," she declared, a survivor reclaiming her life. The case reshaped missing persons procedures, emphasizing relational patterns and property investigations. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment as a somber reminder, a testament to the silent battles fought in the shadows, where survival is the only victory. Story 22. Far beyond the town's whispers, nestled at the edge of the ancient woods, there stood a house forgotten by time. Its windows gazed out like darkened eyes, its porch bowed under the weight of countless seasons past. No ownership claimed it, no memory held the architect's name. It loomed there, silent and enigmatic, until a band of wanderers strayed too close and unearthed its cryptic secret. Names, chiseled into the wooden walls, ran like a spectral warning down the weathered facade. Amidst the list of 27 souls, one name gleamed fresh and unfamiliar, a name that sparked a shiver of recognition among the trespassers, a name whispered in trembling tones, "That's mine." In the dead of night, a call pierced the stillness, marking the incident as mere trespassing on the surface. Mason Wright, the lead wanderer who claimed his name on the haunted house, recounted a tale that defied reason. Responding officers braced for a routine case of mischief, unaware of the chilling enigma awaiting them. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight draped the forest in shadow. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the spectral gallery of names etched into the house's time-worn walls. Some names faded into obscurity, while others remained stark and fresh, as if carved by an unseen hand. And at the base, Mason Wright stood out, the cut still redolent of fresh wood shavings. "I've never set foot here," Mason declared, his words hanging like frost in the frigid air. "How could my name be known in this forsaken place?" The investigation unfurled like a tapestry of dread, each thread weaving a chilling tale of vanished souls. Background checks unveiled a harrowing truth: each name belonged to a lost wanderer, vanished into the woods over the decades. Some cases lay cold and forgotten, while others lingered on, a haunting echo of the past. Forensic experts meticulously catalogued the carvings, each stroke a macabre signature of fate. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, harked back to a mystery unsolved for 37 years, a young woman swallowed by the woods, leaving behind only a solitary boot by a babbling brook. Mason's story remained a riddle, his innocence a flickering candle in the encroaching darkness. As the scrutiny shifted to his companions, a chilling revelation emerged from the photographs: a phantom figure, slender and obscured, lurking in the background of the captured moments. Amidst the desolate interior of the abandoned house, a grim tableau awaited the investigators. Personal effects of the lost hikers lay arranged with eerie precision, each item labeled with a name from the haunted wall outside. Bloodstains, faint yet telling, whispered of untold horrors concealed beneath the floorboards. As paranoia tightened its grip on Mason, shadows danced at the edges of reality. Whispers brushed against his sanity, unseen eyes traced his every step. The specter of Victor Blackwood, the enigmatic recluse who once called the house home, loomed larger with each passing night. The breakthrough came with the unearthing of long-buried records tracing the house's lineage to the elusive hunter. Victor Blackwood's journal, unearthed from a hidden blind, painted a sinister portrait of a predator among prey, a meticulous observer turned collector of wandering souls. The manhunt for Blackwood cast a net wide across the land, yet the phantom hunter remained a ghost in the mist. Mason, his tether to the waking world growing taut, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a chilling message etched in fresh scars on his bedroom wall. Amidst the shadows of the night, a final gambit unfolded, a trap laid with precision and dread. As the forest whispered its secrets, a specter emerged, tall and sinewy, a wraith from the darkest depths of the woods. Cameras blinked, sensors screamed, and in a heartbeat, the hunter vanished into the night. The house, now a sentinel of lost souls, stands silent and brooding, its secrets shrouded in whispers. Mason and the forensic technician remain lost to the woods, their fates entwined with the enigma of the hunter who became the hunted. The investigation endures, a haunting melody echoing through the trees as new disappearances stir the ancient shadows. The names on the wall, etched in silence and fear, linger like a curse on the lips of those who dare to speak them. The house at the edge of the woods, a beacon of mystery and dread, beckons only the brave and the foolish, its story a whispered legend in the realm of the lost. Story 23. The aged apartment held its secrets, with pipes that groaned and floorboards that whispered tales of old. But the new tenant, a woman of quiet resolve, sensed a presence beyond the ordinary. The footsteps echoed from above, a rhythmic cadence that defied explanation. Yet she resided on the highest floor of the building, alone in her solitude. One fateful night she summoned her courage and tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased, plunging the room into a heavy silence. Then a single knock reverberated from within the ceiling itself, a mysterious reply to her inquiry. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the strange incident to herself, attributing it to the settling of the old structure, or perhaps a curious animal seeking refuge in the hidden spaces above. As the enigmatic footsteps persisted each night, she adapted her routines, drowning out the unsettling sounds with the blare of the television or the solace of headphones, shielding herself from the unseen wanderer above. Detective Morris was drawn into the web of mystery surrounding the apartment when a diligent maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed passage during a routine repair task. Removing a section of drywall outside Sarah's unit to mend a leak, the worker uncovered a narrow corridor that defied the known layout of the building. Illuminated by the worker's flashlight, the hidden space revealed remnants of a makeshift dwelling, discarded wrappers, empty bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. Summoned to the scene, Detective Morris and his partner, Detective Rivera, encountered a shaken witness, his words trembling with fear. "Someone dwells within the walls," he repeated, haunted by the revelation of a silent observer. The notebook chronicled intricate details of Sarah Coleman's life, her routines, her interactions, her very essence. Yet as the entries progressed, the handwriting deteriorated into madness, with cryptic symbols etched in the margins. Forensic experts delved into the clandestine passages, unearthing fingerprints that eluded identification in any known database. The labyrinthine network of tunnels within the walls dated back decades, intertwining with the lives of residents past. Strangely, these secret pathways led to viewing points concealed within Sarah's apartment alone, a chilling realization that sent shivers down the spines of the investigators. Interviews with current tenants yielded no anomalies, only the humdrum sounds of everyday life. However, former residents unveiled a different narrative, recounting feelings of unease and whispers of unseen watchers. One tenant had fled after a mere fortnight, haunted by unseen eyes peering from the shadows. Yet their fears remained unvoiced, buried beneath layers of apprehension. The pivotal moment arrived with the discovery of microscopic blood evidence in one of the hidden passages. DNA analysis linked the traces to Martin Weaver, a vanished resident whose absence had languished in obscurity for years. Living directly below Sarah, Martin had voiced concerns about strange noises echoing from above, leading to a confrontation with a reclusive man named Edward who had dwelt in the apartment overhead. Edward's sudden disappearance following Martin's accusations unfurled a pattern of transient existence, marked by a series of abrupt departures from various residences. Residents from his past recalled his intensity and a fixation on silence, a peculiar trait that hinted at deeper disturbances lurking within his psyche. A journey into Edward's enigmatic past uncovered a secluded cabin, its walls adorned with a tapestry of surveillance photographs, notes, and maps detailing the lives of unsuspecting tenants. Journals spoke of specimens under observation and the meticulous maintenance of a hidden world. A chilling revelation emerged with the unearthing of missing persons reports, each tied to Edward's transient existence and the macabre secrets buried beneath the surface. As the investigation delved deeper, the grim truth unfurled in the form of concealed graves, each bearing the weight of lost souls ensnared by Edward's sinister designs. While forensic experts toiled to bring closure to the victims, Detective Morris revisited the apartment building, now sealed off from its hidden passages. Yet whispers persisted, hinting at a lingering presence within the walls. During the installation of new security measures, a notebook surfaced, its pages laden with a chilling message. "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The ominous prophecy mirrored the past, setting in motion a race against time to safeguard Sarah Coleman from an unseen threat lurking in the shadows. Alas, Sarah's sanctuary stood empty, a silent witness to the enigma that had unfolded within its walls. A cryptic message etched on the bathroom mirror hinted at a perilous truth, urging her to look up. The revelation of a removed ceiling panel unveiled the depths of Edward's twisted game, propelling the manhunt for the elusive figure into uncharted territory. Edward Mercer, the elusive architect of clandestine horrors, remained at large, his identity woven into the fabric of unsolved mysteries. The revelation of his past as a construction worker illuminated his dark artistry in crafting hidden realms within the heart of civilization. While thermal scans revealed no current occupancy within the walls, the specter of Edward's legacy loomed large, a haunting reminder of the shadows that lurk unseen. Sarah Coleman's fate remained a haunting enigma, her disappearance linked to a series of vanishing residents across state lines. Authorities issued warnings to building managers, cautioning against the unseen perils that dwelt within the very structures we call home. And as Detective Morris pondered the echoes of footsteps that once haunted Sarah, he found himself listening in the stillness of the night, a silent vigil against the unknown forces that may yet be listening in return. Story 24. The tale began with the new occupants of an old Victorian manor, intrigued by the crackling of the intercom system late at night. A relic of the past, once forgotten but now a curious feature of their renovated home. One evening the husband, driven by his inquisitive nature, pressed the button, only to be greeted by a mysterious whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" The words echoed through the speaker, leaving him trembling. His wife, taken aback, denied ever uttering such a phrase. The manor stood proudly amidst ancient oak trees, its exterior weathered by time yet concealing a modern interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, the new owners, had been drawn to the property by its history and charm, sealed by a surprisingly reasonable price that raised eyebrows even among the real estate agent. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but there was an undercurrent of something more ominous in the dispatcher's voice. Daniel, visibly shaken, led the detective through the grand foyer, recounting the strange occurrences with the intercom system that had plagued them. In the living room, Meredith sat rigid, gripping a mug that remained untouched, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Without preamble, she revealed a startling discovery made behind a wall in the kitchen pantry. A small leather-bound journal, belonging to a previous owner named Alina, had been hidden there for years, its pages filled with haunting entries hinting at danger. The investigation unearthed the tragic story of Vincent and Alina Blackwood, the former owners of the house. Vincent had sold the property after Alina's disappearance, but no trace of her whereabouts had ever been found. As the truth began to unravel, hidden beneath the garden shed, a grim discovery emerged: the skeletal remains of a woman bearing signs of violence. Vincent Blackwood, now elderly and confined to a care facility, confessed to the murder of his wife, Alina. His chilling admission revealed a web of lies spun over decades to conceal his heinous crime. The trial was swift, with Vincent pleading guilty to the murder he had kept buried for so long. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark past, chose to sell the property. Before parting ways, they honored Alina with a memorial in the garden, seeking closure for the restless spirit that had lingered within the walls. As the house changed hands once more, the intercom system was removed, silencing the whispers that had haunted the halls. Workers involved in the renovations reported strange occurrences during the process, attributing them to mere interference. Detective Reeves revisited the case file, reflecting on the enigmatic nature of the house that had seemingly orchestrated justice from beyond the grave. The tale of the house that answered back became a legend among local law enforcement, a reminder of how even the silence of the past can find a voice in the present. Driving past the manor on her way home, Detective Reeves would slow down, the window cracked open just enough to catch whispers carried on the breeze, a gentle reminder of the mysteries that lingered in the night. Story 25. The hotel sat quietly in the night, its faded exterior hinting at stories untold, secrets whispered only in the shadows. A place where transient souls sought refuge, where the past lingered in the air like a haunting melody. The receptionist's eyes held a hint of knowing, a silent warning in the way he handed her the key, his voice a mere murmur as he said, "Just avoid the last door on the left." Intrigue sparked within her, a flicker of curiosity dancing in the depths of her being. That evening, amidst the hushed hum of the hallway's dim lights, she found herself standing before the infamous door. The metal handle sent a shiver down her spine, the wood cool to the touch. To the casual observer, it was just like any other door in the corridor, plain, unassuming. But as she leaned in closer, pressing her ear against the rough surface, she heard it. A soft, rhythmic breath, barely audible yet undeniably present, emanating from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed, with her weary eyes and sharp mind, entered the scene with a sense of purpose tempered by weariness. The barrier of yellow crime scene tape marked the threshold she crossed, leading her into a world of darkness and despair. The room's atmosphere was heavy with the scent of blood, a metallic tang that clung to the air like a sinister fog. Stains of crimson seeped into the fabric of the carpet, a stark contrast to the untouched surfaces that surrounded the tragedy. Amidst the chaos, a figure lay motionless on the floor, a young woman with golden locks splayed around her like a halo. Her vacant gaze stared upwards, frozen in a silent scream that spoke volumes of the terror she had faced in her final moments. Reed knelt beside her, a silent guardian of the truth, careful not to disturb the fragile peace that death had brought upon the scene. The forensic technician's detached voice pierced the silence, detailing the grim reality of yet another life lost to a ruthless hand. Reed nodded in silent acknowledgement, her mind already piecing together the fragments of a puzzle too macabre to comprehend fully. The victim, adorned in finery unfit for the decrepit motel surroundings, hinted at a life shattered by unforeseen darkness, a world of shadows lurking beneath the veneer of normalcy. Back at the precinct, Reed delved deeper into the web of deceit and despair that surrounded the case. 3 women, 3 lives extinguished in the lonely confines of forgotten motels, their stories intertwined by a thread of malevolence that defied reason. The media buzzed with speculation, the community gripped by fear at the thought of a predator lurking in their midst. As days turned into nights and lights led to dead ends, Reed's determination never wavered. The truth was a elusive specter, dancing just out of reach, taunting her with its elusiveness. But a break in the case came in the form of a whispered secret, a hint of forbidden love that bloomed in the darkness of secrecy. Werner's sister, with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, spoke of a man known only as C, a shadowy figure from her sister's past. Reed's pursuit of the truth led her down a path of corporate intrigue where facades crumbled like sandcastles in the tide of justice. Charles Emerson, a man of power and influence, stood at the center of the storm, his polished exterior masking a darkness that threatened to consume all in its path. The unraveling of Emerson's facade laid bare a truth too chilling to ignore. His crimes, meticulously planned and ruthlessly executed, painted a portrait of a man driven by obsession, a man willing to destroy lives to protect his own fragile existence. The courtroom became a stage for justice, a theater of shadows where the guilty faced their reckoning. As Reed locked eyes with Emerson one final time, she saw not a man, but a void, a hollow emptiness where a soul should have resided. The case, dubbed The Door on the Left affair, faded into memory, a cautionary tale of the darkness that lurked behind seemingly ordinary facades. Yet for Reed, the echoes of that night lingered, a haunting melody that played in the recesses of her mind. The keys, silent witnesses to unspeakable horrors, remained locked away, reminders of a truth too painful to confront. In the quiet moments between cases, she found herself counting doors, wondering what secrets lay hidden behind each one, knowing that some doors, once opened, could never truly be closed. Story 26. In the stillness of the night, a mysterious package arrived at Sarah Miller's doorstep. Wrapped in a plain envelope, it held a single brass key aged by time's touch. Sarah, a homeowner in the quiet suburban neighborhood, felt a shiver of familiarity as she held the key in her hand. But as she tried it in every lock she owned, not a single one yielded to its touch. It was a stranger to her home. Setting the key down on her coffee table, a sudden chill swept through the hallway. The old grandfather clock, long silent in its disrepair, let out a solitary, haunting chime. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she pondered the inexplicable connection between the key and the clock. Uneasy and perplexed, Sarah sought the counsel of the authorities. The responding officer, his skepticism evident, suggested it might be a simple mix-up, a key sent in error. But Sarah's intuition whispered a different truth, a sense of unease she couldn't shake. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, placing it in a small bag that would soon become the focal point of a chilling investigation. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for the extraordinary, was assigned to the case. The brass key sat on his desk, unassuming yet oddly disquieting. Background checks on Sarah revealed no red flags, no criminal past, no suspicious activities. She was, by all accounts, an ordinary woman caught in the web of something extraordinary. Forensic analysis revealed only Sarah's fingerprints on the key. The envelope bore no clues save for a generic postmark. The key itself, a common schlage, showed signs of age and wear, hinting at a story untold. A breakthrough came when Detective Harmon decided to delve deeper, running the key's unique pattern through the department database. 7 years prior, a cold case had documented a match, a key tied to a storage unit harboring dark secrets. The original investigation had hit dead ends, the suspect elusive, but as Harmon sifted through the dusty files, a new light emerged. The key was a link to a past buried in blood, violence, and unspeakable horrors. Sarah, innocent and unsuspecting, found herself entangled in a web of darkness that stretched back years. As the investigation unraveled, her sense of security shattered. The search led to Harold Jenkins, a shadowy figure with a past intertwined with Sarah's in ways she could never have imagined. Jenkins, a phantom in the night, had left behind a trail of terror and unanswered questions. The manhunt intensified, unveiling a twisted trail of keys hidden beneath the floorboards of a secluded cabin. Each key, a grim marker of lives lost and souls forgotten. As the investigation deepened, the true extent of Jenkins' depravity came to light. A monster in plain sight, he had preyed on the vulnerable, leaving behind a legacy of fear and despair. In a final, desperate act, Jenkins evaded capture, retreating to a remote tower where he met his end. But his legacy of darkness lived on in the memories of those he haunted. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, found solace in the closure the investigation brought. Yet the scars of that fateful day would never fully heal, a reminder of the fragility of safety in a world where monsters lurked in the shadows. And so, in the quiet of the night, the keys lay silent in their evidence locker, a grim testament to the lives lost and the darkness that lurked behind closed doors. Story 27. The ancient box lay hidden under layers of forgotten clutter in the attic, a silent witness to the passage of time in the old house. Within its weathered confines rested a collection of faded Polaroids, capturing moments of joy and togetherness from years long gone. Innocuous scenes of birthdays and family gatherings filled the photographs, evoking a sense of nostalgia and warmth. Yet, as she reached the final image, a sense of unease crept into Rebecca's consciousness. The photo depicted her own living room, the familiar furniture and decor unmistakable. However, the family posing in the picture was not hers. A woman with flowing honey blonde hair, a bespectacled man, and two children smiled brightly at the camera, oblivious to the dark figure lurking in the background. A shiver ran down Rebecca's spine as she studied the photograph, her fingers trembling slightly as she held it. Descending the creaking stairs with a heavy heart, Rebecca felt the weight of the house pressing down on her, suffocating her with its silent secrets. Placing the unsettling image on her kitchen counter, she scrutinized it under the harsh glare of the fluorescent light. The uncanny resemblance between her home and the unknown family's surroundings sent a chill through her soul. Detective Morgan arrived, a seasoned investigator with a weathered leather jacket and eyes that missed nothing. With a methodical air, he examined the photograph, his gloved hand tracing its edges before turning it over to reveal a blank back. In a low rumble, he inquired about the previous owners, the Nelsons, prompting Rebecca to confess her scant knowledge of them. Taking possession of the photo for further investigation, Detective Morgan delved into the history of the house's former inhabitants. The trail led back through a succession of families: Crawfords, Mornos, and finally, the elusive Sutherlands, who had vanished without a trace after a mere year of residency. Forensic analysis of the aged Polaroid unveiled unsettling details, indicating that the photo had been staged with precision. The figure in the hallway remained a mystery, his presence ominous and enigmatic. A pattern emerged as Detective Morgan uncovered a string of disappearances spanning years, each family vanishing after precisely 1 year in the house. Delving into the building's past, the investigation unearthed a dark tale of Samuel Whitfield, the enigmatic architect who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. His spectral presence lingered in the shadows of the house, his connection to the macabre events becoming clearer with each revelation. Beneath the basement floor, a chilling discovery awaited: a hidden chamber containing the preserved remains of the missing families. Among the haunting artifacts was the same camera that had captured the eerie Polaroid, linking the past to the present in a web of secrets and deceit. As the truth unraveled, Rebecca found herself ensnared in a sinister plot, her every move observed by an unseen watcher. Fleeing to a safe haven under police protection, she was haunted by the chilling realization that the malevolent presence of Samuel Whitfield still loomed over her. The house stood abandoned, a silent sentinel of unspeakable horrors, its walls holding the echoes of the past. The mystery of Samuel Whitfield remained unsolved, his true fate shrouded in darkness. And in the quiet of the night, the sound of a Polaroid camera echoed through the empty rooms, capturing new faces, new lives, and new tales of dread. As the investigation continued, the enigma of the man in the photograph persisted, a specter of the past reaching out from the shadows to ensnare those who dared seek the truth. And in the depths of the night, as the world slept, new chapters of the haunting saga unfolded, forever entwining the fates of the living and the dead in a timeless dance of fear and fascination.